chat. I'm challenging my greatest Bren here because he wasn't able to join us today.
That was a good.
I thought that was pretty good.
I thought that I could see him doing that.
Yeah, that was a very high energy Bren impression, I think. And considering how early it is in the morning, because Avast has got to run away in 2 hours for a very important appointment where he earns money or something, working for Envy.
Yeah, he has an appointment, but really, he's just got another luncheon with Caboose.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what's really
luncheon
going on.
with Caboose. I mean, we know we got to go to the local steakhouse again. We got to discuss. Got to sign papers. You notice today I'm using my AirPods, of course, because I'm quite business-like. You know?
I noticed.
These actually aren't even my AirPods, by the way. These are my roommates, and I didn't want to wear my normal headset because I go to the office.
Sharing AirPods?
Well, yeah, because like when my ears are clean. I clean out my ears every morning.
What about his?
My ears are very clean. I mean, I don't care. It's what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen, huh?
Oh, dude, you're
I get a little bit of wax in my ears.
You're gonna get infected.
Well, you know what? Then I'll blame them.
Those, now, are those AirPod Pros or are they the standard?
I don't
pod?
know. I don't fucking know. I don't actually own AirPods. I don't know what it's. I don't know. I don't know.
You would make a great tech reviewer. You'd be a fantastic tech reviewer.
I mean, like the case opens up and
I don't know. Why do I have these? They're not mine.
It's from Apple. So I just didn't want to mess up my hair before I went to the office, okay? So I have to wear AirPods today.
Yeah,
so
we all know that Avast has a different haircut every time he's on the show anyway. So that makes sense. We have a bit of a stacked show, and we're going to kind of blast through it today because, like we said, we have a bit of time pressure too. There's also, I know that people who are tuning in, there's a bubbling in the scene right now about the accusations, very serious accusations, leveled at Sinatraa, which as of recording dropped late last night. We are going to tackle them on the show, but we're going to tackle them towards the end. It felt wrong to open it up. It felt too clickbaity. So if you're interested in our thoughts on that discussion, there will be a timestamp in the description. And towards the end of the episode, we will be having a serious discussion about it because those are really serious accusations. I think they warrant that kind of discussion about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just wanted to open commending the victim for having the courage to speak out and share their piece as to what happened.
That shit's scary.
Yeah,
it is. And
especially against such a popular figure, you have to remember how much potential hate they could be receiving. So it is very brave of them to come forward. And so that's why we're pushing it towards the end, because we need time to properly give it the discussion and emphasis that it needs.
Exactly. So with that being said, let's kick off our first topic of the day, which is the Challengers 3 recap. I kind of feel like we did some of this when we talked to Baby Bay already, which by the way, if you didn't check that out, what a ridiculous episode. I mean, Baby Bay is a wild human being. I mean that in both senses of the word. He's wild like he's crazy. He's wild like he's untamed. Like we plucked him from somewhere where he didn't interact with other humans. He's insane.
Yeah, that was a good interview. People enjoyed that.
Yeah,
you gotta check.
Just remember when he did the little pump thing for like a Teo?
Yeah,
and he had to like, so he's just always been fucking out of pocket. Like every time he's always been literally out of fucking pocket.
You are picking up more Zoomer slang from talking to Caboose. You're gonna need to cut back on those weekend meetings.
I've known out of pocket. I've known what out of pocket was. It existed for a while. It's way different than like Smeagol, which is like a very recent term, you know? Smeagol's very recent, but out of pocket has existed for a while. It's not even Zoomer. It's like pretty known language. Just you're so boomer that you don't know about out of pocket. I mean, Smeagol, that might as well be an alien language. It's fucking
it was an alien
pocket
language.
has been around for a while.
I don't know. Listen, I read books. Ain't no one saying out of pocket in books.
I read books.
Not saying out of pocket.
You sound like Ty Lopez. I'm here in my garage. I got my Lambos, my bookshelves on the side.
All right. Let's get into FaZe. They won Challengers 3 when it came to NA.
Yeah.
And what did we say a couple of weeks ago? What was it that we... Oh, hello. I'm not on this one.
Yeah, get out of here. Get out of here, Sideshow. We don't need you.
All right.
There he is.
Yeah, we said that we would never talk about FaZe again. Or maybe not never, but we said we weren't going to talk about them.
This was the problem. This is my issue, was my issue with FaZe. First of all, do a show with people all from Overwatch.
Yeah.
So people ask about FaZe Clan all the time. They also happen to be one of the teams that was they were effectively running on a treadmill for 6 months, is what it felt like. There was no forward progress.
Yeah.
So every time we would talk about them, it was just the same discussion over and over and over. And then should they make a roster move? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because individually they seem to be improving.
Plus, who is the person that you would even remove?
It was just this never-ending discussion. It seemed like they were never going to really change. And it came to a head in the Challengers 2 for me, where when they barely beat Built by Gamers to qualify, and then they got knocked out by XSET, it was like, all right, I'm all phased out. People kept asking me, I've seen enough. But then the very next tournament, they come in looking like an absolutely new team. I mean, everything that we could have asked from them, they really brought, I felt. Specifically, more than anything, they had utility combos to set up their players for all of the aggressive plays they went for, which is what they were always lacking before. They could win games before. They could squeeze out wins before by raw aiming opponents and making those aggressive plays. But now, when they have good utility combos set up for everything, and their players aren't just taking a straight-up duel, they're taking fights with advantages from utility, they're just dominating. I was very impressed. They genuinely just had setups all over the maps. There's always a Corey Boombot to set up a Marv Paranoia. Baby and Zachary playing off each other. Baby Bay's entering was really good.
It was.
I was very impressed. And what we were talking about with Baby Bay, they have not a new coach, but a coach who's been in and out, Coach Trippy, who clearly made a large difference with this team. And as to what Baby Bay was saying, he actually told them to change. I think he told them to change all of the right things. I think he put them in the exact right direction.
Which is spectacular, considering that when we were asked what we would do with FaZe, it seemed like a mess that would take a long time to sort out. And okay, it has been a long time of them working actually with Coach Trippy, in and out with some other coaches too, since like the JBL era is what, or maybe even since First Strike actually is what Baby Bay was saying. But the actual results and things started clicking within the last month. And that is spectacular improvement for a side that looked like they had a lot of mistakes to iron out. They really started bringing it all together very quickly.
And I think that's what's so great about FaZe here is that they haven't lost their identity in the showing either. You know, like they just look like a team. Like they were like using utility, like Wyatt was talking about. They took map control. They had people set up in spots. So when they went balls deep and Bebe was absolutely cracked out, just dashing in with Jett with knives, you actually had Zach and other players to support him off the angles and the space that he had created. So I think that this was a great thing for FaZe because they fixed all the issues, or looked like they were fixing all the issues that they were rough with, but keeping the things that made them great, like their very strong aggression and their high fragging power and like how they trade off of each other.
Yeah, and that was particularly evident to me when I was watching their Haven games. They have a new composition that they run when it comes to Haven and Bind, which I thought they might have got by Coach Trippy watching a bunch of Korean VODs, because it's a comp that a lot of the Korean teams are running right now. It's very aggressive. You sub out the Sentinel and you add a Breach compared to the NA standard meta. So you have Breach, Sova, and then you have double Duelist in the Raze and the Jett, and then you have an Omen to play with as well. And when they play that on Haven, at the beginning of most rounds, Marv is using his Paranoia straight off the bat to secure a lobby control. This has not really been meta ever in North America. It's been meta for ages in Europe, like fighting over that area of the map. And North America has just never really done it. Like they've fought over it with AWPs, or you walk a Phoenix towards it, but they've never really used utility like a combination of the smoke and the recon and the Raze nade, or like the Paranoia, something like that, to be able to take that advantage at the beginning of the game. It makes such a difference for how they play this early round utility usage. And when they lose an area of the map, they're now pushing for different areas of the map. It's not just randomly pushing to look for angels, although they still do their fair share of that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think was the reason they were so dominant as well in terms of the actual score lines they were putting up, the post-plant play on both attack and defense was so active. It was so decisive. It seems like the calling structure of the team is more effective. When they're on defense, the retakes would come in so fast. I mean, I remember specifically in their game against Luminosity on Icebox, whenever LG were trying to plant the spike on A, as the plant would come down, FaZe would just be rushing in through heaven, or rafters rather, and immediately stopping the plant. Corey would be in deep. They'd be following him up. They were so fast and so decisive on the retakes. And then on attack, after they would plant, they were still all so active. They were pushing forward. They were taking more control. In that Icebox game, they were pushing into the spawn. They were taking mid control on A. After planting, Marv would be swinging through, and there would always be someone to trade. The trades were always there. They were helping each other more. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Because genuinely, you could not, I said this in the Bebe interview, you could not convince me that what we saw was the same team that we saw a month ago against BBG barely qualifying. I mean, it's worlds apart. It is actually, it is really remarkable how much they have improved in just a month.
Yeah, within that month, and if you just take the Challengers 3 as being indicative of the future, which I saw some people saying that they don't think it is, and I think it's understandable if you think that FaZe are going to drop off after this, but I think most of the ideas that they put into place are going to benefit them for the long term, even if they don't dominate a tournament again. But anyway, aside from that, oh God, I've completely lost my point. What the hell was I talking about? Who knows? Who knows?
Your brain's been scrambled by FaZe.
Throw away. Yeah, my brain actually has been scrambled.
I think it's impressive that FaZe is also the team, which specifically on Haven, that is finally the NA team to FaZe to play Breach. Like, they're the ones that finally going to start playing Breach in NA is FaZe. Like, I feel like I've entered the upside down. I've entered the upside down world where, like, FaZe is the team bringing out the high utility heroes to set up great plays that no one else in NA isn't doing. And I'm like, is this thing on? Like, am I in the right place?
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that it's FaZe the one that's really just altered their style so much and actually started doing things that other NA teams aren't in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, I've been calling for the NA Breach for so long. I've been looking to Shazam, please bring me the Breach. GMD, where is it? And then all along, the saviors.
There we go. Zachary.
FaZe clan. Zachary. Who would have thought? But aside from FaZe, I mean, I think the next biggest story has to be 100 Thieves, right? I mean, they come in second after losing to NRG in the first round, and then they run it through the lower bracket, manage to come in second, pick up some good wins along the way, and I think most impressively, they looked improved from the time the tournament started and ended. You were looking at a different 100 Thieves.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to say as well that this tournament didn't have the top 4 teams in it. At least the teams that initially qualified for Masters. Whether or not you deliberately rank them 1 to 4 is a bit aside. But 100 Thieves lost to LG last time when they were in Challengers 2 with their former roster. They lost a really tight 2-1 game where it felt like 100 Thieves kind of threw it away a little bit. And they rebound in this tournament, and it's a slow beginning. It really is. But they heat up throughout it and I mean, they finished in the finals getting slapped by FaZe. But if you rewind a little bit, they looked good in that 2-0 slapping of Luminosity. Yeah. They looked like they were the team that was always in control. And that was playing on some maps where they didn't look like they would be favored, like Icebox, for example, where they'd just been battered the day before. So I think there were some serious improvements, some good new looks from 100 Thieves, and the trajectory of this team has them still being extremely strong for Masters.
Yeah.
They've definitely ironed out a lot of their... I mean, and also, I know he's positioned to do it every time, but Hiko had some of the most ridiculous clutches in this tournament.
Yeah, he did.
That I've ever seen. Like, yeah, he's 4 kilometers away from the spike. Everyone else is in. Like, sure, Hiko's the last one in. Like, everyone's dead, but he legitimately performs his role so well. Like, the fact that he can so consistently, it feels clutch, even though, like, obviously it's not like winning every clutch, but he just so consistently does it compared to everyone else. It is just insane. And then also, I have to admit, I still wasn't huge on Nitro's Sage. I think it gotten better, but I wasn't huge on it. But especially his walls, I think his walls are still they're kind of figuring out how exactly they want to play with them and which areas of the map they want to control or funnel. But Ethan looked a lot more comfortable this tournament. He looked a lot more comfortable, towards the end of it. I think it's the addition of Ethan is 100%, like we talked about earlier, going to bring this team up a level and make them far more consistent moving forward as they continue to just play.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan had the best performance of any CS player transitioning to their game of any CS player transitioning to Valorant's first games. He had the best initial showing, I think.
I think so. I can't exactly remember what Nitro's first showings were like. I think they were pretty good as well.
But they had
probably
been,
not as
Nitro
good as
Noman was, I mean,
for longer at the time, though.
Yes,
is the difference.
They had.
So that's kind of apples and oranges, I feel. But because in this specific case, he had only joined the team, like a week before?
Less than that, I think. Yeah.
So here's the thing. I think Ethan got put in this odd space where there were a lot of people assuming that he would just come in and be an absolute god immediately. That's the way people were hyping him up, which I just think was an unreasonable expectation. And I think that he played really well and exceeded what you should expect from someone just switching over. And but he wasn't a god player immediately. But from what I saw, I'm now very excited to see where he will be in 3 to 4 months, because he looks incredibly promising.
He does.
So I think a lot of people did him a disservice by thinking that I saw everywhere, that he would just come in and be a god tier player immediately. It's just an unreasonable expectation.
Especially since he entered so late in the scene, Wyatt, too. Like compared to like Leaf or all these other players that move, even Kusta, like the scene is so much more developed than it was when all these CS players swapped over before. Like we're in the third challengers, like it's kind of ridiculous that Ethan would have had such high expectations, but then still look so good with such little time when the scene is this developed. I think.
I really liked him in his position. I thought that he was also, I think that when you take Dicey out of this roster, you obviously need another aggressive component to add with Asuna. You can't just rely all on him. And Ethan was very proactive in the rounds. He was pushing forwards as a bit of the tip of the spear. Not the same level as Asuna, but to some degree still taking some entry fragging duties. He had some rounds where he was lurking as well, and not just the baiting style of lurk where you use your opponent's distraction and try and just get a timing to backstab. He was actually actively pushing other areas of the map for them on Haven and creating space for them in Garage or C that they could rotate back to later on in the rounds occasionally. So I like all of that. I want to talk a little bit about Nitro's Sage, though, because I did agree with you that Nitro's Breach looked phenomenal. It looked really well practiced when they brought it out on Haven. It tightened up all of their timings. They looked good with it. The coordination was good. He was getting value out of his rifling. When he moves over to the Sage, it seemed like they were just trying to plan things a bit too much. There was a lot of times, I'm thinking in my head, particularly of their Ascent A pushes, where they try and do that thing where he walls off the door. And I know where this has come from, because Steel mauls in ranked about people smoking that off a lot. And then they end up getting recon darted, and you can either get killed through it with a tripwire or killed with a recon dart, that kind of thing. So I think their brains have gone, right, well, we don't want to cover that with smoke. We want to cover that with a wall. That's like a huge value wall for us. And it does work really well. Ethan lays down this deep smoke inside the site. Nitro can get close to it with the wall and lay it down. But the amount of times where Nitro was caught with utility in his hands trying to put down these walls because they are part of the strat that you must not deviate from on 100 Thieves, it ended up being a detriment to him in some instances. And I think that's a combination of he needs more practice to be able to know when he should have his rifle out, which players on his team should be holding Heaven for him so that he can get into those positions. And also just the more he plays Sage, the more he'll have an intuitive understanding of how to reactively get huge value out of his walls and out of his slows instead of just it all being pre-planned. Because I think there was a problem for 100 Thieves in that they didn't look practiced enough with how they wanted to use his utility, especially early on in the tournament when they weren't. He was just holding B passively at the beginning of Challengers 3. As it developed, when he played the Sage, when it came to Ascent is the map that I'm thinking of, he was really trying to combo the slows with the nades on various different areas of the map and finding a lot of value on the defense in that way.
One of the things I was very happy to see immediately upon watching them, though, was having Asuna on full-time Raze. Raze has always been his best agent. He always had his best performances on Raze, but he only really brought it out on Bind. I mean, this is since like early Immortals days. He's just always been a top tier Raze. And you could see how much value he was getting from playing Raze on every map, because Raze is just that good.
It is.
Raze is one of the best agents in the game. You can get value from her on every map, and he was getting value from her on every map. And then also, I mean, there's something to be said, obviously, about he had a remarkable performance against LG. That was just
he had some
an out of control showing.
Yeah,
but I think that to go along with the discussion of the comp is just another one of the reasons why I am I'm feeling hopeful for the future of this team with the roster they have right now and the comps that they're running.
Yeah, they still. I think it's still fair to say from this tournament though that they live or die by Asuna. They still haven't figured out that aspect of their game where when they play against LG and he looks like the best player on the planet, they easily roll LG. And okay, you might be able to extend that to most teams. Most teams, if their star player drops those kind of numbers, they're going to be rolling a close opposition. But when he goes up against FaZe and Baby Bay and Corey are deliberately trying to challenge him over and over again at the beginning of the rounds, 100 Thieves just didn't have. They don't have the. It's not that they don't have the firepower. They don't have the initiative on a lot of their other players to make space and make plays on other sides of the map when Asuna dies. And they were really struggling with that against FaZe. It was one of the biggest reasons to me that they lost, was that they kept getting challenged. They weren't set up to be able to deal with it. They kept losing Asuna, and they weren't able to actually move forwards. They just struggled to take any kind of map space without him being involved. And there's two sides of that argument for sure, right? FaZe have to be on fire to be able to do that to 100 Thieves. They're not going to be on fire all the time, though firepower is a huge aspect of that team. And the other side of it is that Asuna didn't look like he was winning any of his duels. So if he does win them next time, they'll look better. But it indicates some kind of systemic issue for them, I think, in that they are going to struggle more against teams with very heavy firepower who try and just take duels.
I find it interesting too on the. Oh, sorry, Wyatt. Do you want to go ahead?
No, go on.
Okay, well, I was wanting just to harken back, to your previous point about Asuna on the Raze, and that Coach Fragon had noted recently that like a lot of teams, there's less duelists, and also a lot of teams there's been a shift towards Raze over Jett on a lot of maps. Like that was his personal observation. But and I find it was pretty interesting in terms of the wider meta discussion of like when we see NA changing alongside the other regions and like where we're looking at is that maybe 100 Thieves are finding more value, not just because Asuna's Raze really good, but they're feeling the utility of Raze adds a lot more to how they play versus like, let's say Jett. Because sure, I think Jett is still the best duelist by far on a lot of maps in terms of like being able to aggressively initiate and take space like on a site. Also holding like no other agent challenges and makes you fear an angle more, right? Because no one else can sit there on an angle and then dash away. And so you're forced to sit there and it's like, is this person going to be here? Do I have to commit utility to force them off this angle, right? Because otherwise they can just free peek me. But I feel like we might be seeing teams in NA start shifting a little bit more towards Raze, or at least like following that pattern that at least it looks like, according to Coach Fragon and some of the other EU players and coaches, that like Raze is seen almost a resurgence potentially, and if NA is going to follow that pattern, or if they're just going to be classic NA and just keep playing Jett because Jett's amazing, but also Jett frag real good and we're NA, so we got to shoot people, and like we don't really think about the other utility involved.
Well, I think 100 Thieves versus FaZe was actually the definition of that
trend
thought clash in NA. The idea being that FaZe are a very NA team. They love to take duels as much as possible. They're going to try and peek and disrupt your timings and throw you off guard. It's not necessarily all-out aggression all the time. They do play very high tempo, but it's not always high tempo. But what they do try and do is take as many duels as possible. They try and simplify the game down in some aspect to whether you can actually hang with them on an individual basis. And that's where they find enormous value out of Baby Bay playing the Jett compared to playing the Raze. And that clash of styles really hit in the finals. And at the moment, FaZe is on top.
So I thought you were going to get at the fact that both of those teams in this tournament both switched their star players to full-time Rays.
Sure, yeah.
And I had made the finals as well, just running
Yeah.
full-time Rays. And in FaZe, we're getting a lot of value.
They were,
out of
yeah.
Corey's utility.
And Raze is fantastic, but I think the solo duelist style, or I mean, some teams in Europe even playing zero duelist, it is very different in terms of how it plays. It's an attempt to be more tactical, adding much more support utility. Your teamwork is way more important.
Yeah.
If you get challenged by a baby bait, you need a couple of players there to be able to repel him, unless you're willing to just take the gamble on whether you win the 50-50 duel at that point. So I think that's an interesting thing to monitor for the future, especially as we add the top 4 teams back in for Masters as well. Like, can FaZe keep up that level of dominance where they only dropped a single map? What were some other teams that you guys wanted to talk about with Challengers 3?
Me.
Yeah.
I want to talk about NRG.
I knew it was. I knew it was going to be NRG.
Here we go.
I knew it was.
Nostra fucking Damus returns.
He's so
to...
smart. You're so
Yeah.
smart, Wyatt. It's crazy. It's crazy how
you.
like taking 4-hour showers before Plat chat, so we start 4 hours behind. Your mucous membranes are just extra hydrated and able to retain just so much knowledge about NRG. It's so smart.
You think you get hair like Wyatt's without taking 4-hour mucus membrane showers?
Maybe
no,
so.
No.
I appreciate it. I felt like I got my flowers this week for those predictions as well. It made me feel good about myself.
Flowers?
Yeah, like I got my
Yeah.
like
Is that
people
a
gave me
phrase? Get your flowers?
Yes.
Oh, I've never heard that phrase.
This guy's you'd think this guy's 50-7. But yeah, I got my flowers for my predictions. But, you know, I'm not going to gloat. I'll be wrong about a lot of things in the future, I'm sure.
Well,
I've been wrong about things in the past.
But that's the key. You have to really gloat about the things you get correct, so that people forget when you get things wrong, and then it creates this idea that you are Nostradamus.
Yeah, that's.
And
a
then
good
at some point, I think in the future, you're
point.
supposed to scam people, and like you're supposed to sell them on something, and they all believe that you're just the prophet from the future. I think there's supposed to be
some Valorant cult.
You leverage
Yeah,
that
yeah.
into a coaching position, Wyatt, and you're making like $500,000 a year, guaranteed 2 years. Then they find out you're actually not that good, but it's fine because they have to pay you out. So that's how you do it. That's how you play it out. That's the money-making strategy of being
Genius.
of sounding real smart.
See, so now is your time to gloat, just for your own good in the industry. Now's your time to gloat.
It's fine. I won't gloat, but man, did I call this fucking game or what? No,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
I mean, true.
But I was happy to see NRG playing how they did. More than the results, I'm glad that they lived up to kind of what I was getting at, I felt, which is that this is a new NRG team. This is not the NRG that we've seen for some. Who are we supposed to mold at now? NRG are good. FaZe are good. Who are we supposed to mold about?
I think we can mold the T1.
Ah, yeah, Cloud9.
Cloud9.
Sorry, Cloud9, but all the molding is heading in your direction
you're getting
for the
3
future.
times the molding now because we can't mold at the other teams.
So I mean, Cloud9 don't get good anytime sooner. It's going to be boring. It's sometimes, you know, I got to get the frustration of my mundane life out by molding at competitive Valorant teams. So Cloud9 is going to feel the wrath of my boredom. But I was happy to see NRG live up to what I was getting at, which is that they are a good team now. And on both an individual and a team basis, I think that they're just bringing a lot more to the server. I was really happy to see Daps playing how he was, which was a lot more
with so much confidence.
Yeah.
Daps played amazing. Yeah, I was totally gonna bring that up. I'm glad you did. Daps played so well. Like he actually was just like perfect in a lot of post plant scenarios. Like the way he played it, he was so good.
This one was really good as well.
He was really active. He was confident.
Yeah,
it looked like a brand new player.
The mechanical
really
master.
Was great. Yeah, he's actually on his way to mastering the mechanics of the game. You love to see it. But then, you know, all around, they have a lot more firepower now with Android. He had a wealth of his own good moments. I was happy to see how they played, and honestly, I'm almost surprised. I was surprised that they didn't make the top 4. I thought they were en route to make the top 4.
So did I. The NRG game confused me.
Gen.G.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. What did I even say?
I said NRG versus NRG.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel like they beat themselves, I suppose. No, I do mean the NRG Gen.G game, yeah. This game confused me a bit, to be honest, because I really thought that after I watched the entirety of Ascent and saw them battle against each other, and it was a really close game, it's just that NRG could not get it together on their attacking rounds at all. Something that had previously been a success for them was their ability to manipulate defender rotations. When they got to Haven, I was like, all right, well, this is a lock for NRG. No problem. Don't worry about it. And then it comes to NRG's defense, and they couldn't stop Gen.G going for these... The Gen.G came into this game with a lot of ideas of how they wanted to exec. I think they went B a lot, and then they like conditioned NRG to focus a lot on B and ended up hitting the rest of the sites. And I thought that this game went extremely unexpected as to how I was viewing it after just watching NRG put up great performances earlier on in the tournament. I think they're going to be disappointed with that result.
Yeah, I think so as well. But all that being said, I do think it bodes well for the future. I think by the time Masters 2 challengers, the next challengers start coming around.
By the way, what the hell do we call those?
Challengers 1.
Challenges, just Challengers 1.
Just restarting. It's just a new season, you know? It's a fresh start.
So 2 months from now, if you say, wow, Baby Bay had such a good performance in Challengers 3, and you actually mean Masters 1, Challengers 3, do you have to really... Do we have to say that?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's awful. I mean, that's just really bad nomenclature. It's terrible. All right. Well,
I mean, maybe they'll change it. You know, they might change. I also have to add one final topic for the NRG. Yeah. It wasn't just a firepower thing for me either. I felt like this team just looked so much better overall too. It wasn't even just like, oh, Android and Daps, you know, they worked on their mechanics, you know, as Daps say, you know, the mechanic difference, but it's more of like they actually looked a lot more coordinated. Like their site takes were good. They took map control consistently and were using utility really well to take that map control. It was like a switch had just been flipped, because I don't feel like they'd only changed one player. You know, it wasn't like they changed a significant portion of this team. Yeah. So I feel like it just something else clicked, and maybe the addition of Android was just a catalyst for them to like start doing, or maybe they just needed someone like Android to allow them to do what they wanted to do. But it felt like they had changed a lot of different aspects of their play and not just, oh, they were getting a lot of kills, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, plus, you're right. That should not be overshadowed by just giving the props to Android and Daps. Their team play has leveled up.
And it's also, it feels a little bit like a honeymoon period for NRG. And I think a little bit for FaZe too, actually, in that they have now got to the point where they need to be taken very seriously by other teams. FaZe, you could always take them somewhat seriously, but you'd never know which games they were going to upset. Yeah. So it didn't really... I mean, how do you prep for it anyway? They're just playing Carnage style. But now teams are going to actually be looking to strategically dismantle FaZe and NRG. And I think that it is quite likely that these guys hit a bit of a high in Challengers 3, and over the course of the next months, it's about making sure you can maintain that position or build on it slowly. Both teams clicked within the last month, and you don't expect that trajectory to just exponentially go upwards. At some point, there's a limiting factor of you guys improved some extremely fundamental things, and the gains end up being diminishing returns, but also your opponents are now more likely to put more effort into dismantling that style as well.
Yeah.
So I think you also have to be careful for your expectations of these teams moving forwards, but positive signs nevertheless, like really positive.
Yeah. And going off that, not surprising that Gen.G made it, but I think surprising in the fashion that they did.
Sure.
Just coming back through the lower bracket, beating NRG, who at that time I thought NRG probably would have beat Gen.G in that game. I was surprised to see Gen.G 2-0 them. And then they damn near beat 100 Thieves right after.
They did, that was a really close game.
Really close 2-1 game.
Yeah.
And so that's another team that I'm happy to see where Gen.G are at right now.
Yeah.
I have a lot of faith in their team now.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like we're in a Sean renaissance, you know? Yeah. Sean had not lived up to expectations since making the move, and Sean popped the fuck off in these lower bracket runs. And also, I have to give Wyatt another flower to add to his bouquet. And I guess you can split the flower, Josh. You can take the other half of the stem. But I was like, I don't know if like Kusa's 100%, in my opinion, had passed player one, but then his performance in Challenger 3, I was like, okay, yeah, Kusta,
Yeah.
definitely a better player now than player 1. Like, Kusta was really, really good.
He's really good. Yeah, I mean, Gen.G are going to actually be disappointed as well that they weren't able to go to the finals and face FaZe, or at least make it to the lower bracket final and face LG, because they ended up losing a 10-2 lead on Ascent, to lose in OT, to lose the entire series 2-1. They would have won the series 2-0 in all likelihood had they actually been able to finish out that lead. But I don't think that is because Gen.G choked. I think it's because 100 Thieves attacking half on Ascent is mega readable. And against teams like against Gen.G, against NRG, against Sentinels previously as well, they've just really struggled to translate the attacking half of this map. Their slow defaults have been completely red.
Yeah, they really have been.
Yeah, so that's an area that I definitely want to see improvements in. But a very good performance from Gen.G overall. And it sets us up for a cool storyline in Masters. We're going to go through our Masters predictions later on in the show. Yeah. But yeah, this was a damn good tournament.
Well, I think there's 2 more teams to talk about.
Yeah?
I mean, I honestly don't have much to say about LG. They kind of just... It felt like they just kind of breezed their way through.
The classic thing to say would be, oh, LG underperformed. Are we worried about LG? I'm not. I mean, it was just... They just
were fine.
They were fine, yeah. They just lost the games that you would have expected them to win. They had high expectations coming into the Challengers 3, but they still made it. They can still rebounce at Masters, and they lost to good teams, so...
Yeah, they lost 100 Thieves and FaZe on a heater.
Yeah.
And then 100 Thieves improving by the end. I don't think they underperformed. They just they were fine. They just, I don't really have much to say about them because they were they're fine. And I think that they could be better in the next showing, honestly. That was definitely not their maximum performance. But the team I really wanted to talk about, unless you have something you're dying to say about LG coming in third best.
I mean, not particularly. I mean, I definitely felt that for LG, like versus FaZe, I just think they just kind of got like gene gapped a little bit by Baby Bay. Like, honestly, like when you play a hard contact style and then you're playing against a team that's willing to send the fucking, just like a fucking missile, an ICBM of Baby Bay with knives, like down through you, and you're trying to play contact and they're giving utility for him and he's willing to take all those duels. If you're all just lining up, giving zero information, and you just keep losing duels to a well set up Baby Bay, I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
you know,
you
like,
just lose.
What are you gonna do against that? Like, and then on top of that, I'd say the 100 Thieves match was maybe a little bit more worrying for LG, but even still, I would argue that's just like a slight underperformance, and that was just 100 Thieves being on, just playing really well and just countering them at all angles. I don't think it was anything bad for LG though overall.
It was one of those games where, first of all, 100 Thieves were looking good, and it looked like they were going to win anyway. And Arsenal was just on fire. And then even though there were the odd few rounds where that was the one series where Hiko was finally Mr. Clutch again, where he was just clutching.
Hey, he went plus 22 and 45 and 23.
Hiko with 11 deaths.
That is
about right.
That is crazy, isn't it? That is wild. Hiko had 2 deaths on a 13-1.
I'm never going to be able to make my Hiko Magic the Gathering analogy.
Yeah.
I'll save that one for next week.
Okay, good. It's hard to criticize Hiko when he has these kind of games. I mean, there are fair No? I think there are very fair criticisms of Hiko, but I think people are just going to throw him away if he clutches games like this.
Huh? Gets a good little Twitch clip.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I mean, if he clutches out these rounds for them, and you can see the impact he gets in terms of rounds
it's just
one
so
on the board.
That's the thing. It's so visible when he gets impact.
Yeah.
It is. It doesn't get more obvious that he is literally winning a round, he's picking up the number and putting it on the board for one of the rounds. It is so obvious.
But so it becomes hard to argue against it.
I'm saving my Magic the Gathering Hiko analogy for another time.
Okay. Brent's already leaked it on his stream.
I know, and I'm furious. I'm very upset. But I want to talk about TSM.
Let's go.
That's what I wanted to talk about.
TSM are very interesting.
TSM now, I think there's a reasonable discussion as to be had whether or not there needs to be roster moves, what will fix this team. They continue to slip. And, they're one of the teams that continues to slip, yet is one of the most highly regarded teams in the scene, given their early dominance in the scene and their run over Ignition Series. And then they made the finals of First Strike. But the past few months, 2021, really, it's just been a slow decline where they've not been able to qualify. Okay, we made it through the third one, and they didn't look like they had much life to them.
No.
They were fairly lifeless. But
they were, yeah. It's hard talking about TSM because they have all of the reputation of an elite level team, but they haven't been an elite level team since just before. I mean, it's like JBL kind of time, honestly. They were elite at First Strike. They kind of peaked there. They had a good idea of what they wanted to do and a style that worked for them. And then they just haven't been, they've tried a range of different things after that, and none of them have really worked for them. The final round in which they went out to 100 Thieves was tragedy upon tragedy. It was where Hayes gets the 4 kills and the rest of them just all challenge. But
Hayes had a great performance in this tournament,
he
too.
did,
That's like the one bright spot for TSM, I'd say, was Hazed in this tournament.
And it makes it very hard to know what changes TSM should make, if any. I mean, for starters, are TSM even going to make any changes? It seems unlikely to me because I think TSM, if they were going to make changes, possibly would have made them earlier.
And, well, do we feel right? I think that given these performances, the discussion has absolutely opened to should TSM get X, Y, or Z player make this change? But it doesn't mean that they have to either.
No.
So I guess I would ask you, do you think they need changes?
I think changes for this team have always been inevitable, and it's just been about how much can you squeeze out of them. And I think you've reached the point now where the scene has developed enough that you need a move. And it's not just that you need a move to add more firepower to the team. I think you need a move that also helps the players create a system that works, that is functional. They've been throwing around the Sentinel role for ages. They haven't figured out proper team roles for everybody. They've been their peaks in performance within recent past, like in First Strike, were by running triple duelist, which isn't viable full time, at least as far as we can tell. And the IGL role has also kind of bounced from player to player over the course of TSM's entire history, though it seems to have settled down a little bit on Cutler in recent times. But I do think that a change, it might not be necessary, because necessary implies that they'll never do anything again unless they make a change. It'll be beneficial. I think a change is beneficial at this point, and I think it's been long enough now. 3 months, it's been a quarter of the year without them doing anything notable. They've only lost to good teams. They've only lost to actual good, aspiring tier 1 or tier 1.5 teams. But that is not what TSM's reputation within the scene is. It's not, we're going to make it deep and we're only going to lose to the best. We're going to beat the best. We're going to win. And if they still have the fire to return to that, I think a move will be beneficial for them to reach those goals.
How do you feel about potential roster moves for them, Connor?
I mean, it's clear that they have good pieces, is the thing. Subrosa's still amazing. When they play, Subrosa still looks like, the best lurker in NA at times. Up there with Steel. When they play, Subrosa still just does amazing things when he's lurking. His smoke, he's great on smokes. He's flexible. You could really, he's got a good agent pool. Wardell is Wardell. And then Hayes even had a great point. I don't look at any member of this team there's a problem, I don't think it's an issue of necessarily talent looking at them. But when you watch their recent games, they don't feel like they have a good grasp of the current meta at all. I don't feel like they really know how they want to play without multiple duelists. I think they're feeling like they just aren't getting this new utility heavy style that even NA is starting to shift towards a little bit, a bit more. So, and they've maybe just been disconnected, because that can happen with teams where they didn't change anything. They were just slumping, they're just hardcore slumping for a reason. But I don't really know if there's a change that I could say on paper, be this is going to make this team better, right away. But it's clear they might need to do something, even if it just means on the basic back end, just completely reevaluating how do we want to play, because they don't look comfortable playing in the current meta and where we're at right now with Valorant. Like I'm just not seeing any sort of cohesion for them because it's not a duel issue. It's not a talent issue. It just seems like they don't understand how they want to play their win conditions anymore for the map. They don't know what points of the map they really want to own. They don't know when they want to commit to those points. And so it's just like hurting them at all stages in terms of these basic win conditions on the map.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's a very good read. I think as well, when you're watching this game, probably being the best example, TSM 100 Thieves, you're just watching TSM play their standard game that I feel like we've been watching for quite a while now. As to your point, Avast, that they haven't really adapted to the current meta particularly. They're playing their game, and I think it was specifically highlighted on Ascent, where we've seen now teams, particularly with Phoenix's, time and time again, hard counter 100 Thieves playstyle on Ascent.
Yeah.
Yet TSM approached the map doing exactly what you always expect them to do. Drone will be on Phoenix. He'll be playing in B main. The flash will come through the window, or will come through main. Him and Cutler, the Sova are going to swing off of it. The only difference was this time now they're running the Killjoy, and sometimes they'll have the Killjoy holding on B with him. But they weren't exploiting the weaknesses of 100 Thieves in mid that we've seen other teams exploit over and over to beat them. Yeah, they were just playing their own game that we've just seen time and time again, and it's just not enough. It's not enough to get over the finish line against these teams who've just been progressing.
And when they're on attack, they don't do anything interesting with how they manipulate the defenders at all. They're posting up, they're trying to get picks, and they try and work off that, or they rely on Sabrosa to try and make some kind of play on another area of the map. They're not dynamic with how they play at all. And I think that's why a change would be beneficial for them, because bringing in a fresh mind to the team might be more important than bringing in fresh hands, in terms of like how they actually play the game. Plus, I think just the way the roles overlap is not great for them. They're really stuck with Drone playing a hard entry role because they want Wardell to AWP so much, which pushes Sabrosa over to playing full-time Omen, which he's great at, but he loves lurking, and Hazed isn't particularly active either, and Cutler plays very supportively. So you only really have the AWP and then Drone to entry. You have Hazed and Sabrosa overlapping their roles in terms of like the positions on the map that they want to play. It's not a coherent system. They want to. I think a change would be a good idea for them, but we'll see what they end up doing. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Europe, because Europe had a similar level of wild. Actually, it had more wild upsets.
Yeah, definitely.
Europe definitely did, and part of that is because there was no lower bracket. It was just a single elim format. But for all of the furor around TSM not being able to enter or not being able to make it to Masters, G2 not making Masters is way bigger. People are making these comparisons between G2 and TSM. They're wrong. I can understand where people are coming from, because TSM won a bunch of the Ignition tournaments. G2 won a bunch of the Ignition tournaments. It feels like a drop-off of the old guard, for sure. But whereas TSM have been a bit lifeless for a series of months now, G2 have come off the back of winning a recent tournament. They just won the Red Bull home ground. They have performed well in First Strike, though they didn't, end up winning it. But they also looked excellent in the first match. Well, I mean, the other part to this as well is that they dominated Europe. They weren't just competitive at the top. They dominated for the whole of the Ignition series. But when you actually look at this game, the first game that I want to talk about, G2 Diffuse in the what was that? The qualifier play-in, I guess?
Yeah.
Or was
qualifier final?
No, it was the Challengers 3 main event, I think it's called in Europe. I don't know.
It said it was under the main event, yeah.
Right.
And that was the quarterfinals of the main event. So.
Yeah, but in Europe, they only play one game. They don't play out the bracket
info
fully,
is
and they don't play
G2,
a double elim.
They played Diffuse.
Yeah.
Winner qualifies, loser not qualifying.
Yeah, and it's a single BO3. No chance of being able to run the bracket again. So, for example, like 100 Thieves and Sentinels and stuff would have been out way earlier when it came to North America. And G2's first map was a masterclass. They looked amazing on Ascent. And I don't just mean in terms of their rifling or in terms of like they were really reactive. Every single defensive round, they had a different setup for how they wanted to work it. And Mixwell's opping combined really well with where Zeke wanted to place the walls, combined really well with how Pith was using his camera for information and where Artis was droning. It was just a beautiful, well set up system. Like if you saw that team playing in NA or something, you'd expect them to be winning the tournament. And even when I watched G2, when I watched that first map, I was watching the VOD, so I knew that they'd lost. But I looked at it and I was like, a team that plays like this should have a chance at winning Masters. They shouldn't be going out. So something went devastatingly wrong in the next two maps. And it did.
It was a very interesting series to watch because on Ascent, G2 really did put on a masterclass in utility usage. I was so impressed with Pith setups in particular. Yeah. He was just a wall on B.
They funneled Diffuse into extremely predictable lanes of the map and reactions and then just destroyed them.
And the thing with Diffuse, though, as well, they had utility setups of their own to try and take map control in B main and A main, but their utility was nothing. It was like it was, it just couldn't compare to the setups that G2 were bringing. Diffuse actually looked like they had a reasonable game plan. G2 were just on another level. They were winning the utility battle in all the key areas of the map, round after round. And even in the few attack rounds that we did get to see, G2 were doing some wacky stuff with like the smoke onto B, the roof of boat, and then the cage up in main, and Mixwell dashes up into his own smoke.
Was that on the pistol round?
Oh, that was so cool. Like it was like the vertical smoke in B main, right?
Yeah,
and he updrafts and then dashes out to sight. Oh, so cool.
They had so many good ideas on this map. The utility play was perfect. But then on map 2, what I found so interesting was what Diffuse did on their attack side to counter losing the utility battle. They started playing more of a contact slow style where they would just be walking up split A ramp, and there were so many rounds that they would just catch G2 players completely unaware. They were not expecting these players to just be walking up so slowly, and they won several crucial attack rounds doing that. By just denying the info on where they were going. They would only use a little bit of early utility, like Logan would use like the mollies over on A main. But for a lot of the crucial rounds that they won were just contact walking up. And that's a way to counter losing the utility. Fight.
But I hated the way that G2 played on the split as well. Because on Ascent, what I loved the most was how active they were. So they were pushing out one of the extremities early on in the round where they're going to funnel into mid or into a catwalk or something like that. And then they're immediately transitioning to droning mid, or they have Mixwell posted up on one of the areas where they're funneling the Diffuse players into. And so there's all this push and pull of the on defense. On split, they just turtled. They never once, well, actually, I say never once, that's hyperbole. They did push B main like twice max, and I think both on eco rounds. But as a general rule, they did not push out B main on split defense. They didn't push down mid particularly, and they also didn't fight aggressively for A ramp control. They held passively in A heaven, trying to catch people off guard with their breach and their omen. And this is such a divergence in playstyle for G2. They are normally at their best when they play actively on defense. And it's punished them in the past when they've played against teams like Heretics, when they try and they're trying to peek for information.
My AirPod died.
No, not the
My
pods.
AirPod died,
bro. Now he's got to ruin his hair.
Oh, not the hair. Oh, no.
Wow.
Buddy.
You really do look like a goblin. That's fantastic.
Oh, he can't hear us.
Fixing it. Us? Still fixing it. Still fixing the audio sources. God damn it.
But
there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
He's back.
Is it working?
He's back. All right. Yeah. So
why don't I hear you still?
Well, we'll leave the audio wizard to his work.
But no, I agree.
I think that they just came into it with the wrong plan. And if they had been more active in terms of what they'd done on defense, which was something that Diffuse did themselves on split, they had a really active defense. You make the attackers much more predictable because you force them to react in predictable ways. And the trap plays that they were setting up were just so unthought through. It looked like if I had to imagine what was going on in the G2 green room before that, in their dugout, it's like Neil Zenio spent 48 hours only preparing Ascent, and he was like, and the rest on you, boys, to win one of the other maps. And it's like, I don't know who did the prep or what the difference was for Ascent versus their other maps, but they looked starkly different as a team. Not the same level of preparation, not the same level of aggression, not the same level of even fragging once it got to bind, because at that point I think they'd lost their confidence.
Yeah, I just feel like they didn't actually... I feel like Diffuse made an adaptation on Split that G2 did not adapt to. They didn't change their game at that point, and they came into it, with a very static, unaggressive defense. Yeah. That was just not... It was not winning them the rounds. And on Bind, I think that it kind of went back to a similar... proceeding as the first map, where there was a lot of utility-based conflict.
There was, yeah.
Specifically in Shower, as is often the case, given how crucial that area is on the map. But on that map, Diffuse were winning all of the utility battles. They were winning the crucial map control on Bind. That
they were
allowed
also
them to
just
set up
kind
and
of
win the rounds.
slamming the players as well when it came to duels. At the beginning of the map as well, Zeke was often left as the Raze player to monitor a certain area of the map. Hello, us in the middle. I think Avast is presumably restarting Discord to try and figure out what his audio problem is. We've just got
so the fucking
Wyatts.
this I'm never using AirPods again for this show, by the way, because it's fucked everything.
Well, I don't want to lose the potential for the Apple sponsorship. I've never had a problem with my AirPods. I use them when I'm working out on the go. Listen, if Tim Cook is listening, I want to get paid. Vast, are you back?
I fixed it.
Okay.
Okay,
wonderful. There we go.
Oh, there's that beautiful face.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna do that again. Never gonna do that again. I've learned a valuable lesson that this will hijack my life.
You're gonna have a headphone dent in your hair.
No, this is just a tragedy. You're gonna have a headphone dent at the NV office. Hastro's gonna laugh at you.
What can I do?
Caboose is gonna be like, why does he look like that? Well, you guys are eating lunch. It's gonna be
I'm just gonna tell him that I've been grinding. I've been grinding. I was at the PC doing a lot of work, and then Hastro's gonna be like, you know what, Raze, showing up. You're dedicated.
Yeah.
But go on. Don't go on.
Playing
Sorry.
Roblox all morning.
What did I miss?
We were talking about G2 Diffuse and just about how weird it was as a series. The contrast between how good they were in the first map and how much they collapsed in the second and third.
Did you already discuss how it felt like? I feel like we'd started discussing it, and I just wanted to make sure that how it felt like after the cock stomping of map 1, where they just rolled, they just rolled Diffuse.
Yeah.
Then they just started. You already talked about how they started playing contact style. And they were waiting to take map control, but they just walked at them. But then as soon as they started getting walked at, they just stopped doing these micro plays that G2 is known for, where they would just have really great set plays, like Mixwell or someone would just call an angle that they're going to go take really quick, and they just go do the play. They just stopped doing that. They just froze in place. They got on the treadmill that FaZe had just left. They just returned to that treadmill for that series at the rest of it.
Yeah, it's very weird as well when it ended on Bind, because their win rate on Bind all time is something like 90%. I think they've only lost 3 games ever on Bind at a professional level, G2. And they ended up looking like they weren't really in control of this map at all. You were expecting some kind of G2 miracle to get them back into OT and maybe steal the win away like they would have done during an Ignition Series tournament, but that was not the case. Diffuse pretty comprehensively outplayed them. Diffuse's team comp, though, as well, has a lot of angle clearing, a huge amount of utility, and G2 really struggled to deal with it. When the B hits were coming through, when they were trying to fight for showers on attack and defense, G2 just never claimed the important areas of the map. This double duelist composition for G2 just wasn't able to do it. Zeke was not able to hold on to his areas. He ended up getting slammed. And they couldn't fight over those aspects. So I guess the important question as well is, do we think that G2 need roster changes, the same as a team like TSM would do? Do we think that the recent roster change of adding Zeke is even beneficial for them? What's the future for G2 look like after going from Ignition Series dominance to not making the first Masters?
That's a tough question. I feel like they just haven't had enough time with Zeke that I think it would not be right to just throw him away already or put the blame on him, because I don't think that it falls on him. I think that in terms of the roles on the team, they obviously haven't figured out what they want to exactly do and exactly do with him, as he's been playing a different agent on all of the outings we have seen from them up to this point. So for those reasons, I feel like they definitely need to give it a bit more time right now, but maybe it was just a misfire from their perspective if they do want to make a move in that they don't actually have the role that they want for him. Because it seems like one of the things that I keep thinking about is maybe they should try like Patty Tech on Duelist. Because or maybe try and have Artis play more Raze and then Zeke can play Sova, which he was on before.
Yeah. Zeke has played Omen in the past as well, so he could just straight up swap with Patty Tech.
Yeah, so maybe they just... I think that that's what they need to try first, because the players on that team have such a high level of versatility. The players are just so good that they can play multiple agents at the top level, that I think that they need to experiment more with the roles and finding something that everyone feels comfortable on for trying to make another roster move. But they do need to continue the experimentation, that's for sure. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they just... I mean, they actually, that's not a good point. They should have enough time to have really figured out these other maps too by now. I think. They should be a lot more...
Well, the thing is, they normally have figured out Bind. They don't lose on Bind.
Yeah.
Except for
I think we're glossing over also for Bind, at least. I'm not so much I still think the same problems we talked about existed, and that's why overall they lost the series. That they just stopped doing what I felt was like the characteristic G2 micro plays of like, we're just going to take control. We're going to set up a quick play, try to get a pick, take an orb, take an angle real fast, which was like part of a grander strategy, but generally it's more like just individual decisions that make up the grand strategy for G2. And I feel like they stopped doing that a lot. But also Bind in particular, Mixwell just had a rough series, a map. Mixwell had a rough map, like just in general. Like, and sometimes you can just chalk it up to like, well, if one of your guys that you like, especially a duelist player on Raze that you expect to be someone driving your momentum a lot of the times is having just a rough map, it's going to be tough to win. It's like, it's like Asuna, it's like if you lose a key fragger, though granted, I wouldn't really put G2 in the same tier as like how 100 Thieves play. That's probably a mischaracterization, but rather like if you just lose a big fragger for your team, especially when it's Raze on Bind, I feel like you're going to have trouble. Because it wasn't like they got stomped. They just did not perform nearly what we expected from them for the other two
do you mean Zeke? Because he was the one playing Raze on Bind. Or do you mean Mixwell?
I'm sorry. I do mean Mixwell. Yeah, I was just mixing up the roles. I should say Mixwell. Mixwell just had a rough map. I mean, Zeke also wasn't the greatest either, but like that was just a particularly bad map for Mixwell.
And I think that part of that also comes from Mixwell being the current IGL, as far as I'm aware, and trying to like when he's playing on Bind in this match in particular, he's having to think on the fly of like, what adaptations do we need to make in order to win this? They were challenged by Diffuse's comp, and they were the ones that had to react. Normally, G2 are a really good team at being able to figure out what they should be doing. But when there's a lot of pressure on Mixwell to IGL as well as Frag for this team, I don't wonder if there isn't like an issue with the IGLing. Not necessarily that Mixwell's IGLing is bad, but that you're putting too much responsibility on that one player to be able to do that. And the democratic system of everybody calls didn't really work. So maybe some kind of change does need to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that there has to be a player change. It might just be you need to do way more pre-planning, going into the match, so that you have a ton of different options, and Mixwell doesn't have to think as much because they've already rehearsed it all in server time. Maybe that's the answer. But whatever it is, it seems like G2 are in a bit of a not a rut, because they've still been performing well, but they're in a position now where they're certainly not the dominant team that they were, and they've had a big upset here where they haven't made Masters, and that is going to be extremely concerning for these players. This also means, by the way, that there's 0 UK players in Masters.
Really?
After the UK scene looking so good at the beginning, there's now 0 UK players. Oh, wait. No, there must be, because... Oh, yeah. because of course.
Oh no!
Yeah, I forgot about this as well. I was thinking
Well,
no G2, no Liquid, and then I was like, wait, but Fnatic made it, didn't they?
This is why This is why they pay this guy the big fucking bucks over at Blizzard. That's what you call a segue, ladies and gentlemen. Fnatic.
Yeah.
Fnatic
versus Ballista.
Yeah.
What happened? Let's dive deep into that one. Batty G. First of all, best alias, my new favorite player.
I want to set this up a little bit, though, because Fnatic have been a team that have just dominated on Bind in the Tier 1 level in Europe the entire time. They're arguably the best team on the world on Bind.
Yeah.
And they end up losing this series. They've only lost it, I think, twice before since starting to play this composition. Mm-hmm. And both times, and I guess now all 3 times, it's been to Polish teams. Polish teams that play Sky or play Phoenix, or in this case, play both.
Literally the reason why I don't want to play ranked. That comp that you're seeing on your screen, I'm not going to play Valorant later today.
Yeah, it was a wild match. Ballista just came out all guns blazing.
They really did. I mean, Fnatic, this is the second time. I think that there are apt comparisons to be drawn between Fnatic not being able to qualify playing against Ballista and not being able to qualify playing against Wave. I think that they are two, in a general sense, they are two teams with similar enough styles that there's a comparison to be drawn, which leads to the topic of Fnatic not being able to adapt on the fly to these incredibly aggressive, in-your-face teams.
Yeah.
They've struggled against that now 2 times in games where they would come in, presumably as the favorites, able to qualify. And in this game in particular, I mean, first of all, on the first map on Haven, I can't remember what was the exact score line?
The exact score line was 8-13. So
okay,
Ballista 13, 8-13.
I mean, there were a wealth of rounds that went in the favor of Ballista purely on insane individual play in post plants.
Yeah.
Often coming from Batty G, who would just come up with a miraculous 2 or 3K. They won a 2v5 and then like a 3v4 or a 2v4 the next round.
They were also very active in the post plants as well, though.
Yeah, I mean,
they were still doing the right things to set themselves up to win those rounds. It was just kind of ridiculous. They did end up winning the rounds.
I mean, when they were on attack, there were rounds where they would plant on A, and as they were planting, he would be pushing into the connector and found a pick on a guy in their spawn, and then would back
really
out.
Active.
I mean, he was very active, very aggressive.
When they planted B, their Omen would flank through Garage and try and get backstabs. Like they're doing all the right things, and they're playing at a really high tempo, this Ballista team.
Yeah, it was.
I feel like this is not an unsurprising result, though, for me, at least compared to G2. This is less surprising, even though it's surprising because, like, okay, we haven't seen much of Ballista, so like, okay, this team is kind of like exploded in terms of our public perception of it. But Fnatic has definitely, especially after their last loss, it's pretty clear they're dependent on their prep and like how good their strats are. And this has never been a high fragger, like, because a lot of teams, when they're like, especially top tier teams that have amazing elite level talent, it's not that Fnatic doesn't have elite level talent. It's rather these guys are very much carried on. They have solid mechanics with great strats and comps and how they play their map. It is not that they're going to win all the aim duels. They're not going to be taking like super clutch situations all the time and just winning them. They're not going to be just absolutely dominating those factors when things are going they're going the wrong way. So it feels like when they're up against a situation where they're strategically outclassed, like we talk about, they're just not going to win because they just don't have the fragging power necessarily to win that. That's not how this team is built. It's to just like win duels all the time, even if they don't have the right setup or the right map control. So this wasn't as surprising to me as the G2 result, where I feel like G2 does have that fragging power to win against unexpected comps.
Yeah. I'm not sure we did a EU bracket prediction previously, but I swear I said it somewhere. I think it was on my stream that it's so... I mean, you could see this coming as soon as you saw that Fnatic were up against a Polish team, and they've only lost recently on their... The thing is, Fnatic's got one god map, and then Haven and Split are like... They can maybe win one against tier 1 teams. They can win them both against tier 2 teams most of the time, but they'll kind of muddle by because their bind is unbeatable. Unless you're Polish, in which case you actually have a free win against Fnatic because you can beat them on bind, and you can, and that sounds like I'm attributing it to some kind of superstition, but it's not. It's literally the fact are the Polish scene plays way more aggressive, plays way more Phoenix, plays way more high tempo, and the way that they play Bind as well is that the scene, for some reason, maybe it's like a lot of the Polish teams scrimming against each other, has a great understanding of the areas of the map that they want to play heavily for. And they bully their way into like the showers, for example, or B-long, and they will occupy those positions and deny Fnatic those areas of the map. And then they're going to explode out with a lot of flashes that go through the Viper walls. They had a Sage as well that they were playing with that like locks off the default spot and provides so much other value on other areas of the map. Like when Fnatic want to do fast reactive plays, they can't because they've got slow orbs in front of them. And so when you're getting pushed by a Phoenix and you want to run the other way and like take the other bomb site, but there's a Sage slowing up everything, you end up just being they felt like they were tactically outplayed as well as the pace was increased and they couldn't handle it. They had Ballista had a good read of what they wanted to accomplish on Bind, and they ended up getting boomed. I mean, it still went OT, which shows you how good Fnatic are still.
This is also a recurring theme as to the woes and struggles of this Fnatic iteration.
Yeah.
Or in this current blip on the Fnatic timeline, the map pool.
Yes.
It has been a consistent issue with them that they win Bind, they'll take the other two maps close, but they're not going to win.
Yeah.
It has been a very consistent problem.
And their Haven looks so close to being good. They have so many good ideas on that map.
I mean, that map could have been a lot closer than it was.
Yeah. This was the first time they played Phoenix on Haven as well, from Doma.
Yeah.
Doma's a very flexible player, but this is the first time I've seen him play Phoenix on Haven for them. A bit of a greedy composition perhaps, a slight adaptation to try and bring something new. But at the end of the day, Fnatic look like they have slipped a little from being a tier 1 squad in Europe, and they still have their Bind, which is still tier 1 despite them losing it in OT here, but there still needs to be some work on the rest of their map pool for them to be in a position where they could win a tournament.
I have to say, and this is a little bit speculative, but I actually do wonder if the pressure of not making it and this being their last chance got to them a little bit, because there were a lot of rounds on Haven where if they got an inch of an advantage, it seemed like the Fnatic team just started to scramble, and they felt like they had to take advantage of it immediately. They never slowed down the pace.
Yeah.
They would find one pick, and then, we just got to go to the site immediately. They would just rush into the site, and it would just fall apart. They were losing to ecos on that.
Yeah,
they lost gun rounds to that.
They lost both 3v5s and like 2v4s to just getting a pick and immediately pushing the site instead of relaxing. They had like 50 seconds on the clock.
They never relaxed. They never looked comfortable, which I do wonder if that comes a bit from them needing more experience and being on now a massive org on a big stage in a big game. Last chance to qualify. They've already failed twice. The pressure's there. Because I've never seen them look so uncomfortable on some of these rounds like we did on Haven.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely. And I think I'm still optimistic about this team, because if they get their map pool out, I think they'll be fine. Because I'm using a market term. I'm bullish on the fact they're still so flexible, and they're also so willing to like change up their comps and be very strategic in how they play. And I think that's great. And they have solid mechanics. Like, sure, they're not. I don't think this team, when I look at them now, I'm already predicting. I honestly can't see this team as we move forward and we just get more and more crackheads that enter that are just mechanically gifted. I don't know if this team is going to continue to win a lot going forward, but they definitely could still be the top of Europe going forward. It's just they need to figure out their map pools. That's how I personally feel about them the more I see them.
And I'm excited to watch Ballista play because we haven't seen too much of them as well. What were some of the other matches that we had as well? Let's get cracking. Avast is... I don't want Avast to have a permanent headphone line when he goes for his meeting. I want to make sure he gets out of here on time. Are we able to bring up the bracket? Because we had a Wave versus Guild game, actually.
Yeah.
I think we should...
I think the Guild one was great to talk about because Guild looks so good. They look like old Guild.
They do, yeah.
Well,
they look like Yassine and Safe look amazing.
Ah.
They looked amazing in this match. I actually really
What about them was amazing, Connor?
What was amazing? They popped the fuck off. Like they actually just looked so fucking good. You see, like their and also Safe had multiple very strong clutches in the way that he like was just the way he anchored sites. Like he just looked really, really good. You seen like honestly, it was just forcing them off every angle and just pushing so aggressively too with det packs like into sites, and they just couldn't stop him at times.
Yeah,
like they just looked so good.
Safe Cypher is really good. I'm enjoying watching that. It seems like his Killjoy still needs a little bit of. It's not that it needs more work or anything like that, but they've kind of got him penned in a corner where he has to play very defensively when he plays the Killjoy. Whereas he has more freedom to explore the map when he plays Cypher. And it seems to benefit him a lot in terms of what he likes to do and the impact he can have on the game. I think especially evident even when you watch the closer match that Guild had against Entropic just before that, because they kind of blasted Wave, but before that against Entropic, they won 2-0. It was like 13-11, 13-10. They seem like they've put a lot of work into their execs and their attacking side. Bonkar's calling seems like it's working really well right now. All of their ability timings are perfect when they're hitting a site. Fault line will come through, Raise Nade will come through on one area of the map where they've jiggle peeked, they've seen where a player is, they've already used utility as part of their default, so the defenders don't know exactly where they're going to hit, and then suddenly Fault line, Raise Nade, Recon Dart will hit, and the site anchor's like, shit, and ends up getting overwhelmed by this level of utility that they're throwing in at the beginning. Then when you combine that with the fact that Yassine is playing really well and Leo's on the breach, but he's still able to get involved with the fragging, this is looking like a good team. Like, I don't know whether I would say that they look like world beaters right now in Europe, but they look really good. I'm interested to see them play against the likes of NIP, FPX, Heretics, because I put those three on a bit of a pedestal right now. I'm expecting one of them to win Masters. But Guild are showing a lot of promise. They haven't... I mean, Entropic and Wave are not tier 1 teams, but Guild still look good. So I think the jury's still out on like how good they can get to, what's the peak that they can reach. But I'm feeling pretty promising. Or rather, they look pretty promising.
I didn't watch the game.
Yeah.
I got nothing. But
it was a good one, though. It was a good one.
It was really, really good. I really was impressed by Guild in the series.
I'm glad to hear that, though. I'm glad to hear that Guild are back on the way up.
Because
I had high hopes for them. I really do. Like getting Safe back, I was really excited to watch the team again, and I had high hopes for them.
And they looked awful at the beginning.
Yeah, they came out and they were plank and they fell over. But now they're getting back up. So that's good to hear.
And also Safe has been able to have a lot of value from the Sentinel role, which I thought they might have to move him to playing like the Sage or something for him to have that kind of value.
Just the Killjoy just wasn't for him.
And I think it was just the Killjoy isn't really for him, and he's kind of getting to grips with that. What was the final game of Challengers 3?
OG versus
OG Raise Your Edge.
FaZe Your Edge. And this is another game, I'll just say right off the bat, I wasn't really surprised on because I'm not big on OG. So
yeah, I saw people commenting, wow, Fnatic, G2, and OG out? And I was like, please do not put OG in this.
These things are not the same.
Please do not put OG in this. Yes, it's mega surprising that G2 went out, although Diffuse look excellent. Yes, it's surprising that Fnatic lost to an unknown team, but you could kind of read it in the water of how Fnatic have been playing. It's not surprising to me that OG lost this series. OG are not a tier 1 team. They're at the similar kind of level to Raise Your Edge. They have less skill in the server than a team like Raise Your Edge.
And it was kind of evident.
Yeah, and Raise Your Edge also had a good game plan to come into these games with too. They weren't just running around and fragging. They actually had like a good idea of what they wanted to do. Can you pull up that game again, Kurt? And we'll just take a look at the compositions that they were running. On Ascent, Raise Your Edge have a really high win rate, and recently have transitioned to running a 0 Sentinel comp that looks a lot like an Icebox comp. I mean, it's got the Reyna, the Jett, and the Sage, and then you have Silver Omen at the end as well. They're playing really aggressive. They're pushing out areas of the map. and then holding a bit of a default and transitioning that and getting massive value out of their duelists as well. Okay, CNED doesn't have the greatest game, but CNED in previous games has been popping, so don't worry about that guy.
You're allowed to go 9-12 when your reign is 24-8.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and they won 13-3 as well, so it wasn't even like he had that many opportunities to farm the kills.
Their attack half was... I mean, obviously you can see by the score it was dominant, but it was impressive. It was an impressive attack half from them. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was just the individual skill difference was very
evident. It was
there's some
evident,
freaks on Raise Your Edge.
Yeah.
Also, I love the alias Bone Cold.
Bone Cold.
Just in all caps. All caps.
Yeah.
It's very aggressive. It's in your face. I like it.
I do like that one.
Yeah, it was an impressive win. Definitely did not feel. Yeah, that's not an upset.
No, and I really wish that we had a double elim bracket in Europe, because if we can take another look at the bracket, there is no world in which you would expect these four to, like, if G2 dropped to the lower bracket or if Fnatic dropped to the lower bracket, you would still expect them to have a decent chance of advancing and maybe beating, like a Raise Your Edge kind of team. Or maybe if G2 play against Guild, that's another great game to see who the top four genuinely is. So Europe kind of getting a lot of upset results, not just because there are great teams coming up in Europe, there certainly are, but also because the format is not as rigorous as it is in North America, which some people might find extremely entertaining. I'm going to find it really entertaining to watch Ballista and Raise Your Edge play in Masters, but I'm not convinced that we actually got the top 8 teams in Europe. I don't think that is, I don't think that's like a...
That's not a hot take.
No, I don't think
that's not
a
unreasonable at all, considering how
that's a
format has been.
Yeah. So
very reasonably temperatured, nice glass of water take.
Interesting. Now I wanna raise something with you here. There is like half an hour before Avast needs to go, and we still have this Sinatraa topic to tackle. I think we tackle it now. And
because we're gonna need a good amount of time to tackle this properly.
Yeah, and I want to give Avast an opportunity to talk about it rather than just like we have 5 minutes
we don't
left.
Rush out. That's that wouldn't be right. To try. Yeah, if we have to rush.
Because I likely will
rush
have
through
to
my
leave.
weekly award or
exactly.
predicting.
We can rush through the other part of it, but I think it would be unfair to rush through this topic. So we weren't intending to address it now. We were actually intending to address it towards the end of the discussion, so this is going to be like a bit of whiplash that you're going to get in the middle of the episode. But we'll return to your previously scheduled broadcast after this. So I guess to intro this topic and to whirl away from the European scene for a moment, like last night, Sinatra's ex-girlfriend came out with a bunch of really serious accusations, and almost calling them like accusations.
It doesn't
or
feel
allegations.
like it gives it enough weight as to how.
But I don't know what else you would call it. I mean, that's what they
typically
are.
Yeah, it's referred to as allegations or accusations. But to those who haven't seen it, there are, aside from numerous screenshots of exchanges,
manipulative behavior exhibited through text messages.
There's an audio recording of.
Which
essentially,
which was taken consensually, according to his
a consensual audio recording of her asking. Basically, she was saying no. Jesus Christ, the light just
I don't know. The light just turned to 100 and blinded us.
I don't know. We're being visited by Christ. But essentially, what had happened is she was saying no. He
was continuing.
Did not abide by her request.
Yeah. And she said that was a recurring problem throughout.
And I listen, let me say something right now, actually. I'm having trouble even talking about that and vocalizing it. And personally, I find immense discomfort in even reading the personal exchanges of people. It's hard to read that. Let alone, I didn't listen to this audio because that's just, it's too discomforting for me. So imagine being her. Put yourself in those shoes of having to relive that and get all of this together and go back and to listen to tapes of an intimacy with you and your ex-partner, and to have to find that audio and clip. I mean, that, just imagine putting yourself there, given the immense amount of discomfort I'm feeling just having to look at that. you know? So
yeah, and it's horrifying to think about.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is being like trapped in a relationship like that. But I think I appreciate her speaking out about it as well. I think that these things are important to have aired, not not in like all of the details being public and stuff, but just the general idea of it is important to show that the behavior is unacceptable as well. And the community response to it at the moment seems to be pretty reasonable, actually.
Yes.
Rather than, I'm sure she was scared that she would just get vilified for it too, because that happens on a regular basis, especially when you're addressing a player that's mega popular, or just anybody that's really popular and is in a position of power over you when it comes to the relationship because you were a fan of his, etc. So, yeah, I think that's a wild situation. I want to let you two speak on it a bit though, because I have something different I want to say at the end.
Yeah, so I know, but I think here, and we touched upon it, and I touched on earlier, is that how big a figure Sinatraa is here, not just for Valorant now as well, but within Overwatch too. So he is a big figure in 2 different games, and it takes a lot of courage for someone to speak out against, not just in general, but against someone that is so immensely popular, and that experienced a very heinous act. And it's something that just by the name alone will receive an insane amount of vitriol and like hate. And theoretically, obviously, we have to put our disclaimer here is like, we always side. I mean, at the Plat chat, I believe we all agree with this, that we are supporting the victim and siding, with the victim, making sure that we allow more people to speak forward and talk about it. But there's always theoretically 2 sides to every story. But obviously, we are siding and supporting the person coming out first. And because it's a very, very heinous accusations and acts here that were said. And just to go against such a popular figure, people that we have interacted with. I mean, Josh and I, we both have interacted with Sinatraa. As uncomfortable as that is, we have 100% interacted with him, and we would have never even known such a thing was possible until this came to light, right? Yeah. It's very different to hear stories of toxicity and to be outed as a sexual abuser. And it's something that we should be working on. If you're uncomfortable with that, and I've seen some vile takes on the timeline, about e-girls, and Wyatt, we were molding over this earlier, and that as if e-girls are somehow just to make women lesser. And the thing is, this victim is a woman. It's a person. It is not an e-girl. It is a person talking about terrible things of that. I just choked on my own water in the middle of that. That's going to really add to the power of my point. I want to make jokes because I want to lighten the mood, but there's nothing really to lighten the mood. It's just bad. It's just how I am. It's like, you don't want to confront how bad the situation is, but it is bad. And I think we need to make sure to never lower people, human beings, to the point of calling them e-girls and clout chasing and stuff like this. This is a very serious act, and it doesn't really belong in our community, and we should support the person coming forward.
Absolutely. And I will say that I am happy to see, I don't know what is going on with, I guess, in regards to Overwatch, but at least in Valorant, I can say I'm happy to see the responses that I have been seeing, the overwhelming responses from other, from pros and other public people in the space vocalizing their support, which is obviously very important. And that, that I think, it's trying to think of the right way to say it, but I'm just, I guess I'm glad to be, it's good that the community puts those values first. I think that's been a crucial
systemic issue within esports.
Yes,
in the past.
Because that is what I'm trying to get to, which is also coming off of what you had been talking about, Avast, like essentially people making an effort to dismiss claims by dismissing who the people are, or putting them as a lesser than by, in reference to what you said, saying, oh, well, just an e-girl. No, like you said, it's a woman. It's a person.
Who just happened to be a fan, got in a relationship. That doesn't lessen the seriousness of it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's, you know, there will come a time for pretty much every man or boy listening to this show now, us, everyone, where you're going to be in a situation where you are with someone, you are interested in having sex with them, and they are not. And when they say no, it's a fucking wrap. Nothing else on the planet matters even a bit in that moment. And especially not your fucking ego.
Yeah.
That is the last thing that matters. Okay? And I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment. Listen, in this space, there are a lot of young men who are deeply insecure. That is a fact.
Yeah.
And you can see how in its worst ways with this situation that can play out.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you can keep going.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it's for Sinatraa as well. It kind of there was a big there were a lot of announcements a bit like this. Calling them announcements is a bit weird, but there was a lot of accusations like this a while back within the esports scene as well, and it kind of petered down for a bit. And then this one as well is such an explosive one too, that I wanted to take a moment instead of just talking about how much we support the victim in this sense, to normalize women coming out about it. That's all really important. And that has to be supported. Otherwise, you end up just in situations where they're scared to talk out, and then the abuse continues. Obviously an awful thing. But rather than just doing that, I thought, considering that our viewer base is like 90% plus young men, where it's like men between the age of like 18 to, I don't know, 30, something like that, looking at our demographics, I wanted to talk a little bit just about like the actions of it from that point of view, because there is a small but systemic issue within esports where this keeps cropping up. And it's nothing to do with, well, at least as far as I'm aware, it's nothing to do with the act of actually playing esports itself. It's a product of having so many young and socially awkward men who have not been properly educated on consent and that aspect of communication within relationships at the beginning of their life. And a lot of the responses that you see that are uncomfortable around these kind of topics come from the same people who are mega insecure and acting horrifically in ranked and throwing around slurs and stuff like that. And it's the kind of behavior that you want to get rid of. But I don't think it's as simple as saying, just don't be shitty, because those people don't even realize that they're being shitty. I think you need to like tap into it on an even deeper level. So I just wanted to kind of address some of that as well and talk about, like, if you're a dude that's watching, and this is completely anonymous, right? Because I'm not interacting with you on a person-to-person basis. I'm not responding to one of your comments or whatever. But if you've been made uncomfortable by the entire situation and you feel emotionally inclined to side with Sinatraa or side with the men in these kind of instances, and you feel like the behavior is normalized, it's an opportunity to reflect on why you feel like that. It's the behavior is not acceptable in the slightest, like manipulation within relationships, abusive power dynamics, and just straight up sexual abuse and rape as well. All of those things completely inappropriate. And if you feel like defending any level of them, it's probably a good indication on an emotional level that you need to take a look at yourself. And I know that for a lot of socially awkward young men, it can feel like a lot that you have this social pressure to be the instigator in sexual relationships, and that you have this like deep fear of rejection. Fucking everyone does. Don't worry about it. Everyone hates being rejected, and it can feel like you're in like an awkward position. But the answer is never to be silent or manipulative. You have to be open. Like, you have to try and communicate things openly. And don't worry about getting mocked or rejected or any of that kind of stuff. you don't want to be with people who are like that anyway. So if you're open with them at the beginning,
Yes.
you get through all of that. And it's about gaining that confidence when you're in those scenarios to be able to navigate those situations openly and with proper communication. Like being able to actually communicate and ask for consent and get that. You don't have to fill out a check form. There's so many different ways that you can do that and make sure that your partner's on board with it rather than just peer pressuring them. You can peer pressure your mates if you want to go to the pub and grab a drink, or peer pressure your mates if you want to watch a film with them or something like that. You should never, ever, 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 ever be trying to peer pressure somebody, man or woman, whatever the fuck, to be engaging in a sexual relationship with you, because the state of which you're in is so vulnerable and personal, and the psychological effects of getting peer pressured into those situations is extremely harmful for you in the future and for how people then perpetuate abuse onto others sometimes in like a cycle. You never want to be going down that road. There has to be a clear distinction in your head that, yeah, it's funny to like bully Bren into playing Valorant with me tonight, but it's not in any sense applicable to sexual scenarios. It has to be really clear communication. And I think there's just such a systemic issue there. And if these kind of discussions make you uncomfortable, even if it's just like, yeah, I'm not comfortable talking openly about that kind of stuff with sexual partners, that might just be because you're young. And that's okay as long as you work on that and develop it. And it never gets to the point where you're being manipulative or coercive.
Please do not believe. One thing I resent is this grand misconception that like asking for consent is going to like kill the moment and it's some weird thing. It is such fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just not. That's something that you hear I swear I hear that constantly. Yeah. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
It's a very simple thing to do, to ask for the consent of another. And then if you have it, everyone is at ease and everyone is comfortable. Yeah. And then if there is a problem,
you feel more comfortable because you know what's happening.
Yeah.
You don't get stuck in that, like, I always think of it as when I was really young and I didn't understand what was going on and I'm like trying to read body language and I'm like, oh, fuck. And my brain's exploding. And it's so much simplified if you just ask them.
Yeah.
You're just like, if you think things are going in that direction, just asking them like, hey, you want to fuck? Just like whatever, however it ends up being. Like it's not complex.
And we should tie this back in also to a wider point about esports and gaming in general.
Yeah.
To like sort of close, because this is going to be my final thoughts on the statement, and then I have to leave. So, but I just want to give this my final point here is that all of us here, all three of us, and if Brennon had been able to be here today, he would also agree with this, have all experienced toxic gaming culture and culture that has sort of normalized hurtful discussion around all sorts of things, minorities, women, all sorts of that. We 100% have. Every one of us here. I like, it's just 100. And at times when you're a young guy growing up, and we're all still very young, but when I was like 16, 17 and stuff, it felt normalized to have these sort of discussions and to feel that be the tone, because that was where the culture was at times. And you're so young and you are experiencing this that you just find it to be almost normal. And it's okay, like Sideshow is talking about, if if this makes you feel uncomfortable, it's okay. It's not your fault you've been exposed to toxic trends that happen online and in male-dominated spaces and in spaces with people that have not gone out and experienced more or been out more in life. That's not your fault. It is your fault if you do not reflect and grow to become better. Like, you can get it. We've all been exposed to bad things when we were young and exposed to a culture that is toxic to all sorts of groups, including women now in this sort of situation that could perpetuate bad behavior. And that is not any young guy's fault or any young person's fault at all for experiencing that. It is going to be your fault if you don't reflect and grow and realize how that is hurtful and how normalizing that can cause problems like we're seeing with this. And also for my final point there is, for esports guys, hero worship's a problem with anyone. Anyone that you really like or is really good at something can be a bad person. They can be a great person, they can be a bad person. And that includes esports players. And I don't think hero worship is ever the right way to go for anyone. No one should worship us as heroes. We're just normal people that do a thing. This is like our job and we do this. And the goal though for an esport player and for every person in esports is just to be a good person, You don't have to be an amazing, you don't have to be the greatest person ever. You don't have to be Gandhi, you know, like you just have to be a good person. And this is a situation where it's clearly a moral failure, and arguments to be made about like, okay, well, they're young and they didn't know better, don't hold up when it's an action, not a belief, you know, like a belief is not an action. Like if someone has been exposed to toxic behavior and they believe this, but they change and they never make an actionable problem, they learn, that's okay. But if someone performs a bad action, that is a bad thing. And it's something that we don't want in esports. We don't want star players, and we don't want our community. And no matter how star, you could just be a social media manager that no one knows. We don't want that either. No. We just want good people. And for esports and gaming, there's a lot of toxic stuff for young guys that experience, and it's okay to experience in that. And to at one point think like, okay, like, is this normal? But the right thing is to then hear the things we're talking about and grow and realize this is not okay, and to not do things that, you know, that have been listed out here, and to not make it unwelcome for others.
Yeah. It's
very well said.
It's an extremely disappointing situation as someone who is, you know, a huge fan of Sinatra's career and what he did in the server. Extremely disappointing to wake up and hear that. But like Avast is saying, the people who are great at video games are not always great players. In fact, some of the greatest people in like sports and other fields end up being very shitty people because they sacrifice so much of the other growth aspects. So it's important, if you're watching, if you're really trying to get into esports, that you have the right role models and also the right balance of trying to develop as a person and not just blindly go for greatness and ignore everything else and become a shitty person as a result of that too. It's it's always extremely saddening when these kind of things appear, because you know to some degree that statistically they must exist. You don't know who, and you hope that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So when it comes to light, it's just profoundly upsetting.
Yeah, and when it comes to light, it is the responsibility of the community and its members to show support for those who do bring it to light.
Yeah, show compassion as well.
And further than that, there eventually needs to be, I mean, I guess this is partly what we're kind of getting at right now. We are discussing it right now openly. But I think there needs to eventually be a more broad esports discussion as to helping some of these younger men before it gets to this place, because it's easy to see where vulnerability and insecurity there are a lot of young men in esports who need psychological help, honestly. Because there's a like, there's a lot of people who we're not particularly social, a lot of insecurities, and
the education system just systemically around consent is very poor, at least from my experience in the UK.
Yeah, and this is an example of it at its worst.
Yeah.
When that manifests itself in terrible ways, this is it at its worst.
Yeah.
So I hope that, I don't know what the solution is, but I guess in the future of esports, with there being so many young people involved in it who are, as you guys were saying, spending all of their time practicing and playing games, they need help too.
Yeah, they
like
need people
early though. Yeah, you know what you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because also there are dynamics to this which, even if there hadn't been sexual abuse claims by or rape claims as well by Sinatra's ex, the manipulative and power dynamic aspects exist all over the space.
Yes.
I can tell you they exist all over the place, with people taking advantage of fans being interested in them and normalizing that behavior. And it just, people need to talk about it more, and not just talk about it, but advise new pros who are in a position that they've never been in how to act responsibly. And
I mean,
if you're a guy as well, try not to just think about this from the view of, well, this ruined Sinatra's career, so I'm not going to do it because it was bad for Sinatraa. Try and think about it the other way around as well, of like compassion for the people that are getting fucked over too. It's all right if you end up reflecting and becoming better because you're worried, like if concern drives you to act as a more moral person, I suppose that's a benefit in the end. But also try and think compassionately about the people who are getting just hurt very badly by these kind of behaviors within the scene too.
Yeah, it is just it is of utmost importance to remember, and I'm glad to see that it is. I feel, at least, with the response to this kind of changing. But yeah, that narrative of sort of dehumanizing or dismissing the people who come with these allegations, and in this case, just straight up evidence as to who they are. I think that is so. It is just of the utmost importance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you. These are people. It's humans.
Yeah.
You know, it just despite it happening online and behind the walls of the internet.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of, these are humans, and I'd like you to think about it from their perspective, sort of what I opened with.
Yeah.
As to speaking of the discomfort of even just having to view this.
Yeah.
Think about having to do it. Think about having to post it yourself.
Yeah.
Think about having to find that audio yourself of that being done to you and having to share it publicly just because you know that people are not going to believe you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just put yourself in those shoes and think about that.
Yeah. Well, is it time for you to disappear, Mr. Avast?
I do have to, on a very somber note, but I think a note where we definitely put the right message out, at least I feel, but a somber note nonetheless. I now have to go to work with a giant hair dent because of the headset.
Could you show us that?
Can you show us the dent?
Lighten the mood by showing us that hair dent before you go.
The Tyler One-esque dent. You're going to have to turn as a profile.
Give us the profile shot. No.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Oh,
look at that.
More to the side.
I could see as the light shone on it there.
Here, let's see it.
You can kind of see.
There it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
It's a little. Yep.
Looks like your skull's soft at the top, like a baby.
Yep. So I'm gonna go comb that, and you know,
go to Arby's with a caboose.
So yeah, I'm gonna go that. So I'm gonna miss Wyatt's weekly award and the rest of the discussion, but I feel like we had to be up to this point. So I gotta exit. It's gonna be a duo show now, Wyatt and Josh, and so everyone enjoy.
What a time to be! Well, here we go.
All right,
this is the special segment. What did someone in your chat came up with a show? They were coming up with show ideas as if we just had a thing of you and me. I think there was like hard boiled with the egg and Dr. Valorant.
Yeah, something like that.
There's some wacky show names like that. So I don't know. Maybe that's what. Since Bren's not here, people have to leave comments so we get the engagement up, and so I can buy more of these goddamn chains on my neck.
Yeah,
we got to get the
Plat
engagement
Chat
up.
logo.
Yeah, I want to get a chain with the Plat Chat logo, and I'm not going to get that if there isn't an immense amount of engagement. So this week, the responsibility of the YouTube commenters is to leave a comment as to what the show would be called if it just our show, you and me. Is it hard boiled? Where are we taking it? You know what I mean?
The dock and the egg.
Yeah, the dock and the egg. I like that one. So people in the comments, you can come up with a show name. But let's. Do you want to do the predictions? I mean, might as well.
Here's what I want to do. There's like one topic of news that I think is interesting. Okay. We had a bunch of different topics. We thought we would go through things quicker, as is usual. We did not. And so I want to hit one piece of news, which was the Alliance news. Because we just talked about Europe, and European Masters has Alliance who are going to be playing in it. And Alliance went on a Twitter PR adventure this week as they said that we already knew that they were dropping Krieg, and we knew that they were going to pick up somebody else. And there was rumors, leaks, faked. I don't even know. I don't even want to discuss that aspect of it. But they also tweeted that they were going to pick up a Frenchman who had played for Envy, and they put NBK's profile as the picture of the person that they were going to pick up. And there was all of this rumor that it was going to be Kenny S as well. And then they go for the old mega debate, and it's XMS, who played for Team Finest, was already in the Valorant scene. It wasn't even anyone
I've
swapping
kind of
over
done
from
XMS
CS:GO.
dirty in reality because far less exciting.
Yes.
Never work NES or NBK,
Yeah.
but is still good for them for finding a replacement so fast.
But it makes a lot more sense because people were also thinking maybe it would be Happy because Happy had
Which
just
also
been
would have made sense.
dropped from Giants, but Happy's been playing heavy lurker. He's been playing Raze a lot of the time. He played a little bit of Sage at the beginning of the game as well. But XMS has literally been playing Smokes for Team Finest.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make a swap right before Masters, this is the only French person that made sense to me. Like this made a lot of sense. As soon as I think it was Nell like raised it as a possibility that it could be XMS, I was like, oh yeah, it's just got to be because none of the others make anywhere near as much sense. Finest has been knocked out. XMS is a good player, was putting up good stats for them and performing well in the server. Grigon looked like he was inexperienced or making some like what's the best way of doing it? He was making some ambitious plays in the server that wouldn't, I think, work against top level teams. And XMS seems like he'll be a good replacement.
I'm just laughing to myself, and I can't help it because this whole situation was just so silly.
It was, yeah.
It was just very silly. It took over all of every post I saw. Everything I was
Is that good
witnessing
marketing,
was
though?
just Kenny S, Kenny S, Kenny S, Kenny S. Kenny S responds. Kenny S posts a GIF. Kenny S goes out for dinner. It was just everything was about Kenny S.
And then NBK had to respond as well. Or not had to, but
I mean,
did.
listen, it worked.
Is it good marketing?
It got them a lot of clicks.
It got them a lot of clicks.
The impressions, engagement.
Yeah. But at the end of the
Click-through
day,
rate.
at the end of the day, people, I think, are just going to be a little disappointed.
I know
the
problem is they went to the most hype players you could possibly get.
Yeah.
And then, we got XMS, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but
not as cool as when you pretend you got Kenny S.
yeah. Don't you think there's something weird about that as well?
It's a very wacky situation. And
I'm not sure if Banks is has personal relationships and rapport with Kenny and NBK because Banks did work in the CS scene. So if he's like buddy with them, I could see this just being funny.
Sure.
If you're not buddy with them, that's just disrespectful, I think, to like drag them into your PR campaign and almost like imply that they're leaving CS. Like they've just now been hounded by fans begging them to contradict this. Unless they're good friends with Banks, this seems shitty.
Listen,
isn't it?
But the impressions.
I would be, by the way, like thinking about this.
Look, it got
from my
Kenny
point of
S's
view.
impressions up too. Everybody's numbers are up.
Yeah, I mean, would I be annoyed though? Like, if I'm thinking about this from a talent example, if like, if Riot, for example, released like a picture of a silhouette of me, and they were like, "Guess who we're getting for Masters?" and then they announce like I don't know, like they announce. I don't want to use anyone as an example now because it's like
I mean, just someone who's
underwhelming.
nothing like you in your place, though.
Yeah, let's say Rivington, okay, because he's a Riot employee. You expect him to be involved anyway, and so it's not surprising.
You both might be in your 40s. That's the similarity.
Yeah, okay, maybe who's even the youngest? I don't know. Me and Sully. If they announce Sully instead of me, where instead of getting the 40-year-old boomer, you get the 16-year-old guy with a periodic table in his background. Like, I would be pissed by that because you're like using my image to debate your viewers, and I don't know. I think that's really weird. I think this scenario was extremely strange, but I think XMS will be a good player. I think Alliance will be pretty good heading into Masters.
All pretty funny though.
Yeah,
all pretty silly.
All right, so instead of talking about the other news topics that we had for this week,
want to prediction it up?
Yeah, let's prediction it up.
Predictions.
So I want to go into Europe straight away now because we've just talked about Europe, then we had the Sinatraa aside, and then we talked about Alliance. Let's do Masters Preds for EU because EU is wild, man. It's actually...
I didn't actually see it yet. It's going to be my first time seeing it.
Oh, well, I'm not even sure a bracket exists. But because only some of the regions have actually put their teams into brackets. But I guess if we don't have a bracket, then we just say like who we expect to go deep.
I thought you meant the bracket existed already.
I don't know.
All right, Kurt,
does the bracket exist?
Bring the teams up. Let's find out.
I don't know.
Kurt, do you want to just be on the show now?
Yeah. No, I don't think the bracket exists. So
We need you on the show, Kurt. How do you feel about Alliance?
But actually, we should. The problem with finding the European bracket, though, you'd think you should be able to formulate this yourself, but you can't because you don't know who was higher seeded.
Randomize it again?
Maybe, yeah.
That's what I heard.
It might just be random
again,
teams from Challenger 1 versus random teams from Challenger 2.
I have this problem where I just see things on the internet and
You believe them?
I just, a guy in a Twitch chat said that? Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Probably true.
I try and fact check, but it takes more effort to do that. So
It's more convenient to just believe random chatters.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
Twitch chat,
So-
honestly.
Since there's no bracket, maybe you predict who's gonna win it all.
Yeah, I think like the teams we're expecting to take it. Like, who would you have as your favorites to take Europe?
FPX.
They're damn good, aren't they? They're
They were
incredibly
damn good. I mean, it's you're hard pressed with the top three. I think with FPX, NIP, and Heretics. My mind keeps wanting to put Heretics lower than they really deserve.
Yeah.
Given, but then it's their problems weren't based on the actual gameplay. It was
Yeah.
outside factors. So I'm trying. You got to get that out of your mind. But
Yeah.
I'm going to go with FPX because what we did see from them was just damn good.
It was incredibly
It looked like their result at First Strike just kicked them into high gear.
Yeah.
And with seeing the payoff from the Dimasic move.
Yes.
Those two
Yes.
things seem to have really taken them up a notch. So I'm going to go with FPX, but listen, if NIP win, if Heretics win, it's not like a mind-blowing result.
No, I think it would be mind-blowing if it wasn't one of those three teams. It would be a huge upset. Like, even if someone like Guild or Diffuse after beating G2, if they go on to run the entire bracket, those would still be big upsets, I think. But I'm not going to pick FPX for a couple of reasons. One, we've never seen them on Icebox. Literally never. So I'm just going to assume that that's not a great pick for them. And that could hurt them when they go up against teams like NIP. And I also think that their bind, they're still trying to figure out. Whereas other teams, particularly like Heretics, but also some of the other teams that we've got around here, have been very good on bind in the past. Like Diffuse's bind looks really good now. And I think NIP have a good bind, but I can't actually remember. But my choice would be NIP. I think that this team has developed so much since adding Akukos that I just believe in their IGLing a lot. I believe in their players too. I think JD and Rhyme have both been really cracked as the main portions of firepower for this roster. And I think that my money is on NIP to look like the best team in
Is
Masters.
he going to say it? Oh, I thought you were going to say the world.
Oh, well, I haven't seen enough of them yet.
Sure.
I haven't seen enough of them yet.
I
think
deliver a little spice there.
even saying NIP is going to win Masters, I think, is a bit spicy because although I know that a lot of people are on board for that take, they haven't proven it completely yet. And neither of FPX and even Heretics have had they've been subbing out Lowell and they haven't shown dominance across the entirety of their map pool. Europe just hasn't had the same level of comprehensive evidence because they haven't played out the brackets in full and they haven't had double elim that NA has. So I always feel more like I'm taking a bet when I talk about the EU teams because the top level tier 1 evidence is not there.
Yeah, listen, if I wasn't going FPX, I would go NIP.
Which
I can't be mad at picking.
Which I think sets up a wonderful scenario for Team Heretics, where despite winning First Strike, they're not actually the odds-on favorites to win Masters.
Definitely not.
And so they're slipping under the radar, I think, again, where you didn't have them as favorites coming into First Strike, but you knew they were dangerous. We said when they played against Liquid, they might actually be favorites in that game. When they played the quarterfinals.
Yeah, it was quarterfinals.
Yeah. In these games, any game they go into, they should not be considered the underdog, but they're never going to be like the team that's talked about the most during Masters until they reach the finals, I think.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, again.
Yeah.
And so there's the potential for a run it back here for Heretics, which I think would be an unbelievable achievement. There's just so many storylines here. FPX would win their first ever tournament after failing in all of the Ignition series and coming second, basically.
Feels like the longest of times coming.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
And
Honestly,
they'd be so justified for that Meadow move as well, if that was the case.
Yeah.
And all of Angel's IGLing looks phenomenal right now.
Yeah.
They're just such a clean team. for Heretics, I've gone over their storyline a little bit. For NIP, Akuko's coming into the scene, Existence for anyone who's still unaware, and just retooling NIP and turning them immediately into the best team in Europe would be god tier. I mean, that I would love to see that happen. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like Ballista and Raise Your Edge, who are just powerful fragging teams. Alliance and Diffuse are both upcoming rosters that have really worked on their teamwork recently. And Guild are part of like the old guard that slumped a bit, but are on their way back up, I think.
Yeah.
It's a cool tournament.
It is. It is.
I think I would still like to have G2 in this tournament. I would still like to see where Fnatic or Liquid would go. But I think especially for Fnatic and Liquid, they haven't earned their spot. I mean, G2 didn't earn their spot in a literal sense either. But especially for Fnatic and Liquid, you could make the argument that they are on the outside looking in of the top 10 right now.
Yeah,
especially
I think that's pretty reasonable. Especially, if you build out a hypothetical lower bracket, you could absolutely foresee G2 running through that and being able to have still qualified.
But I mean, what an interesting bracket. When it actually plays out, if we scroll up to look at the format a little bit, they're going to get seeded into 2 groups. So I imagine each group is going to have 2 from Challengers 2 and 2 from Challengers 3. Which means that...
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's going to be the normal way that the bracket will play out.
Yeah.
So you would expect FPX, Heretics, and NIP to be able to make it through, which leaves like 1 spot open for the rest, and it's going to create a group of death. Like one of these groups will necessarily have 2 of NIP, FPX, or Heretics in it. They literally have to. That's just the way the math is going to work. So that's going to be a really strong group. And if anyone manages to get an upset over them in the group stage, considering the group stage is double elim, you'll have deserved it at that point. I think it's a cool format, actually.
Yeah, good format.
Again.
This is a good format.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with it.
Yep.
All right. Do you want to bring up NA, Kurt? We actually have a real
bracket. Because they played out all the seeding games, so we can understand what the seeding of all the players are immediately. So let's take a look at the actual bracket for North America, and already the bottom end of the bracket, we talked about this a little bit when we had Baby Bay on the show for Backchat.
Yeah.
The bottom end of the bracket is stacked. I mean, it's actually stacked. If you go off name value and like what you expect to see from these teams, especially considering 100 Thieves should be better than they were during Challengers 3, you've got Immortals down here who've been making it deep in so many tournaments. You've got 100 Thieves who are going to improve, presumably. Sentinels and LG. Sentinels, best team in NA, probably still. LG with that perennial rivalry with them. And then what seems like an Envy FaZe clash in the upper semis.
Yeah, I think if we want to start from the top down, you have to think Envy are going to be Gen.G, despite Gen.G being able to consistently improve over the last several weeks that we've been watching them play.
Yeah.
Really starting to find themselves. They're becoming a more dynamic team. This new iteration, they found a way to enable Sean on this roster. But I don't think it's going to be enough against Envy right now. Envy should still be able to take that game.
Yeah.
If Gen.G can win, I mean, kudos to them. That would be a sick win.
That would be a crazy
That would
win.
be an insane open to this tournament if Gen.G can take that. Xset versus FaZe, I got to give it to FaZe this time. The difference, again, before the Baby Bay interview, I watched back the Xset game again that they lost, and watching that in comparison to how they're playing against LG, for instance, or 100 Thieves now, it's just different.
Yeah.
It is a different team. And they were very close to, they had a decent, they lost 0-2, but the maps were still fairly close against Xset. And I think that they have just leveled up so much that I don't foresee Xset having made the same strides in this period of time that FaZe have. And FaZe are going to come in with giga confidence.
They are.
I think FaZe are going to win that game. But it does set up Xset to... I think that Xset could definitely make it through the lower round after that. But yeah, this new FaZe, comparing it to... It's just different. They're going to win this time.
Yeah. So I think we've got Envy FaZe in the upper semis. What about the lower semis? Let's just predict the upper bracket, because lower bracket, I mean... Lord knows
well,
where
Envy
that's going.
versus FaZe... I mean, that is...
Oh, well, let's do the upper quarterfinals first. Like Sentinels LG.
Oh, Sentinels LG.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know what's happening with Sentinels.
Well, true. We don't actually know
Sinatraa
whether
might be on a one-way flight to the island. And he won't be
Yeah.
playing. So
With these kind of situations, though, normally the organization, at least, I don't know, generally speaking, they wait for the player to respond or something. So this tournament might just end up being too early for them to make some kind of decisive move within the org. I don't know.
I don't think it's going to be. Well, there's no point in speculating.
Yeah,
we don't know.
We
It's
literally
hard
don't
to
know.
say.
We don't know. But I think if we just assume that Sentinels would be the same as how they've previously been, and if there is a change, then obviously that is going to make them a lot worse, and they'll probably drop out the tournament in fairly quick fashion.
Yeah.
But assuming they're the same, we would expect them to beat Luminosity, presumably.
Yes. If they're the exact same, especially given what we had seen from Luminosity in the last tournament, which again, they were fine. But they definitely did not come with the explosiveness that we've seen from them recently. But I also think some of that is due to the fact that they are now so established that teams are more prepared for them and understand how they're going to play.
I think that's a big thing. I think that's also something that's going to hurt FaZe during this tournament, actually. But
it could,
but I think it's already happened for LG, and I think it takes like a week. I don't think it'll happen this weekend, but I think next weekend FaZe might be impacted by it.
I could see that.
I could see that. By that point, they'll have already played their games against Exit and Envy, and they could be already in the upper final, but for all we know.
Yeah.
Immortals 100 Thieves. This might be this is the best game of the first round of matches. I don't know what to think about this one. I think that
It's so hard to call.
I think with how 100 Thieves played in their most recent games in Challengers 3, I might give the slight edge to Immortals. But I'm expecting 100 Thieves to have improved, even on their improvements already in Challengers 3. And I also think that there's a factor to consider about Immortals choking against elite tier competition. They seem to perceive the Sentinels, TSM, 100 Thieves of the world as being better teams than them. And there seems to be a bit of a crumbling when they meet them deep in a bracket. This might be early enough in the bracket, though, that Immortals just come out firing. That's
what I was thinking. Maybe this is just early enough in the bracket that they're not going to get shattered by the stones of 100 Thieves crashing against the glass mental that they seem to, always succumb to.
It would be unusual for Immortals to have a choke in a quarterfinals game.
It would be, but this is
not normal.
This is the quarterfinals of a big tournament.
Yes.
So a bit different.
I think.
How do we think the maps are going to go with this?
I think Immortals definitely wants to play Bind. 100 Thieves have looked like they want to play Bind, but they haven't got everything sorted on that map yet. So I think some serious prep for for 100 Thieves in this week is to get your Bind mega up to scratch. They looked like they had some good ideas. They were fighting very heavily for Nitro, playing within Hookah a lot of the time, and they had Asuna and then was it? Oh, maybe it wasn't. I can't remember exactly who was fighting over Showers as well on defense for 100 Thieves. But they have a similar idea of as Immortals, of like the areas of the map that they want to fight over really intensely. I think Immortals are just going to be more practiced at this point. I hate underrating 100 Thieves though, because they're elite level players and they do improve really fast. It's just so hard to know how much better they're going to be at this point.
I think, I feel like the three maps are going to end up being Bind, Ascent, and Icebox.
Yeah?
Because Immortals have been really liking Icebox as of late.
I think Immortals just get a free ban on Haven.
Yeah.
Which 100 Thieves have, to their credit, have
good on.
Yeah, and the 100 Thieves have also opened their map pool in that sense as well. Because previously they were just Bind, Ascent, and a little bit of Icebox. At least now they have Haven to dabble with too.
Neither team really plays Split.
No.
And
I think 100 Thieves bans Split, Immortals bans Haven.
Yeah.
You end up playing on Bind, Ascent, Icebox in some kind of order.
I think a lot of
Still
it,
very
I think
hard to
it's
call.
really going to come down to Icebox. Because you could see 100 Thieves got absolutely destroyed by that T1 attack on Icebox. And I feel that their attack is very similar to Immortals. They both play the Viper, Sage, we're going to go B and put up the wall, and they play that style.
The Viper is one of the things that Steele said was messing them up in that game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure.
Viper's really good on them.
So I wonder if they'll be able to rectify that issue by then, because they obviously have so much to work on being a new team. That if that's one of the things that, excuse me, falls by the wayside, then Immortals' default Icebox game might just be too much for them to handle right now. So,
I think as well that if Immortals have... I think part of this series as well comes down to what Immortals are even playing when it comes to like Ascent. What have they got shot up playing? Is he playing the Reyna? Is he playing the Breach?
That is another question.
What are they playing?
What do they have him playing on Icebox 2? Is he going to play Killjoy?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not a clue.
Because getting shot up on the right role against 100 Thieves is so important, because one of the things that 100 Thieves have struggled the most with is playing against explosive duelists on the other team that love to take duels. And I'm not just thinking of their whooping by FaZe recently. I'm thinking of their Ascent loss to NRG, where Android was facing very regularly. I'm thinking of their Ascent loss to Sentinels, where Sick was facing very regularly. Just trying to look for duels in mid and on catwalk at the beginning of rounds seems to really throw a wrench in the plans of 100 Thieves, and it disrupts their slow defaulting style. I think the Breach is not a good idea for a shot up to continue with. But until there's just so many unknowns about this game that I have no idea. I guess
it is so hard.
I guess I would give a punt for Immortals, but until I see the agent select and get a bit of a feel for how the teams are playing, there's so much that could change from their last showing to this one.
It is so hard to call. It is so hard to call. Yeah, I'm gonna go Immortals too, but I mean,
who knows?
What is this, a 50-50?
Yeah,
I mean,
basically.
genuinely, this might just be a coin. This feels like a coin flip if there ever was one.
I mean,
yeah,
the way the game
when
actually
we see
plays
the comps as well, I'm like, oh God, can I change now to 100 Thieves? Yeah. But yeah, for now I'll go Immortals.
All right, so Envy FaZe in the upper semifinals.
I mean,
Envy.
I think you have. Oh God, I mean, what are the maps? Here's the thing: we haven't seen new FaZe play on Split.
Yeah.
So we don't know what they're doing there. Presumably Envy want to play Split, but maybe it just gets banned. FaZe might just ban Split.
Yes, FaZe I think should be just straight up banning.
If I'm
Split.
Envy, what am I banning?
Probably Haven.
Think so?
Probably. I don't know for a fact, but I think probably.
Yeah, because they kind of all play. They both teams play all the rest of the maps.
Yeah,
really. Envy actually kind of just play every map.
Yeah,
when you think about it.
Yeah,
they have a pretty good map pool right now.
Yeah, I mean, Envy's Haven has previously been bad, but then they whooped Sentinels on it.
Yeah.
So I think it also comes down to, does FNS have a read on FaZe that he thinks they can demolish their Haven gameplay, so they just leave it in the pool instead of banning it? There could be some tactical stuff in terms of the map pool here. I'm gonna give it to Envy. I actually think that when Baby Bay was talking on Backchat, he talked about how they match up nicely against Envy most of the time. I think that the way Envy was playing recently is that they had duos. Like, whenever Food was looking to take a duel, he had Crashies right behind him, like ready to support him, ready to swing on him, ready to trade him. And I think they are going to end up being more disciplined than FaZe is.
Yeah.
Even new FaZe are just going to try and take as many duels, play as aggressively as possible. And even if Food isn't having an incredible game, even if Baby Bay and Corey are both doing really well, I think the structure of Envy, with especially the way that Crashies plays, should be enough to get them over the line.
Yeah.
And if it goes the other way, where Envy are hitting all of their shots and FaZe aren't, then I think it's a comfortable win. I think the balance favors Envy in this matchup, even though it's going to be an explosive game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go Envy as well, but it's a close one.
Yeah.
It's a close one.
And then Sentinels Immortals, I guess we're predicting in the upper semifinals. I'm going to give this to Immortals just because we have no idea what's going to happen to Sentinels.
Yeah, same.
And so I think we look at the upper final, and if it was an Envy Immortals game, it seems primed for Envy to go on a run here. Like the bracket looks good for
This
them
looks
to be
like
able to
Envy's
get into
tournament
the,
win.
yeah, it looks like Envy's tournament.
If Envy are ever going to, I mean, they have won a tournament, so I can't say if they're ever going to win a tournament. But if they're going to cement themselves as a number one team at some point, now would be the time for them to do it.
Now is the perfect opportunity.
100 Thieves rebuilding, Immortals still figuring things out.
Sentinels now have the Sinatraa issues to deal with as well, which could seriously impact the team.
Luminosity have been kind of figured out. I mean, honestly, FaZe might be the hardest game for them.
Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah, it might be. Unless 100 Thieves look a lot better, or Immortals, have really leveled up, then, yeah, their hardest game in the whole bracket might be FaZe in that upper semi.
Yeah, like XZ are good, but they don't have the firepower. Gen.G are good and they're on the way up, but I don't think they're there yet. I mean, this is set up for Envy to win.
Which is crazy, right? Like, there's no way a month ago we would have been saying Masters looks like Envy's tournament to win. There's no chance we would have been saying that. Not a chance in hell.
But this looks like theirs to win.
It does. And I'm really excited to see what happens here. We've got a lot of matches to cover in North America, and this bracket should be sick. I think we did get the top 8 teams. I think these are the top 8 teams.
We did.
I think
you
could make maybe an argument about NRG. Like maybe you think NRG would be able to squeak in there over some team. But I think most people would have these actually as the top 8 teams.
I think, NRG and TSM are right outside of it.
Yeah.
Right outside of it. And then T1 after that.
Yeah. Pretty damn cool. All right. Now, instead of doing predictions for the other regions, I wanted to just blast through them really quickly and just look at some big matchups. Let's take a look at Brazil and Korea and just do a general preview, some big storylines coming into them. I'm really excited for Brazil, but it's only got single elimination, which is a shit format. It doesn't even have the double elim groups of Europe. It just has 8 teams, boom, put them in a bracket, boom, 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 find the winner. That's disappointing because you've got a grand finals level game in the semis.
The semifinal should be Furia Gamelanders. I mean,
it would be unbelievable if it wasn't. Because
Slick definitely have a better chance of upsetting Gamelanders than Imperial do Furia, but
even then, not
even
that much.
then,
like Slick are a wonky team. Slick are a lot of fun though. If you're
that'll be a fun game to watch.
If you're looking for a really fun game of Brazilian Valorant to go and watch, Slick are crazy. They have a Sage who just walls for himself and tries to play with ops and stuff, and taking weird off-angle duels, which is cool to watch. If you're a Sage player and you want to do some TikTok Sage shit in your ranked games, go and watch BLD. And then they've got their Raze player. Hastad?
Yeah.
Is that his name? Yeah. Has been just buying the judge and jumping around and rifling and just using his mobility in as many players as possible.
Wishes he could be.
Yeah.
It's what Bren attempts to be in
It's
our
a bit like
games.
Doenmo that we showed recently on the show, who plays for F4Q, or played. He's not actually on the starting roster anymore. He plays a bit like that, but he uses more rifles. He doesn't just use the judge.
Yeah.
But that should be a really fun game. But yeah, it feels like there's no world in which we don't get Gamelanders Furia in the semi.
Which is... That's a game right there.
I think those are the 2 best teams in Brazil. I think that is a phenomenal game. To give you guys a bit of history as well, the last time these 2 teams played, it was a BO1 on Icebox, and Gamelanders won. And it was a great performance from Joe, their Omen, and it was a good performance from MW as well. And John played well too. The time before that, the only other time Gamelanders and Furia have played, it was a BO3 and Furia won in their first big showing against Gamelanders as a new team. So there's history here, there's rivalry, there's such a high level of competition. They play at a ridiculously fast pace. It's so exciting to watch. This is going to be happening at pretty much the same time as one of the NA games. Go and watch this one.
Yeah, whatever.
Seriously,
what is that on the 20th? Yeah, I mean...
5 p.m. on March the 20th. I don't know what game in NA is happening at the same time, but unless it's the grand final, it's probably not as good as this.
That's going to be better than whatever's 100 Thieves versus, I don't know, LG.
Yeah, some lower bracket game is going to be occurring in NA. It won't be as good as this one. Watch this one.
But yeah, that is a sick game right there. And then the lower bracket is just stacked. Just Vorax versus Pain. Pain,
These are like the 2 Ignition Series, First Strike, competing for second place teams.
Yeah.
But they've both slipped a bit recently.
Yeah, they both
Especially
slipped a bit.
Pain.
What with the rise of another upcoming team in Sharks, but then also the two super teams really being created in both Furia and Vikings.
Yeah.
So they have slipped down the rankings a bit, but they are still very good teams. So that Vorax Pain game should still be a very good match. And then Vikings versus Sharks, that is just, Vikings are another super team that has been formed,
Yep.
and Sharks, who are up until this week, Squad 5, are just an incredibly talented upcoming roster. They
actually gave Gamelanders their first ever loss in a grand finals as well.
They have, aside from sort of the classic Brazilian just trope, I guess at this point, of their players are cracked out and they're aggressive, they have excellent team play. They have excellent utility usage. They're really good at controlling areas of the map. Sometimes they do the G2 clump. They're like the clumpiest. They love clumping around. But that's going to be another.
That's the best quarterfinal.
That is the best quarterfinal.
If you want to watch one quarterfinal,
true.
you watch Vikings Sharks. If you want to watch one semi, you watch Gamelanders Furia. And then the grand final, in theory, should be Vikings, but they could actually get upset in that first round. I think I would expect Vikings to get there from the lower bracket. And then between Gamelanders and Furia, man.
I mean, I gotta be honest, I don't know.
No, I
the problem is we've only seen one BO1 on tape. So
yeah, the BO3, by the way, was not broadcast, so you can't go back and watch that between Gamelanders and Furia.
I don't know how to call that.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the bold prediction that it's Furia Vikings for the finals.
Oh, okay.
Not based on anything particular, because I think genuinely, I think Vikings could lose to Sharks, and I think that would not be a massive upset. It would be like, oh, that's significant, but it's not unexpected. And Gamelanders Furia, it's actually just anyone's game to take.
Yeah.
But what I think would be coolest, maybe this is where my thought process is coming from, is to have two brand new super teams in the finals of Furia versus Vikings and get to see that play out. I'm expecting, though, that whichever team wins Gamelanders Furia to actually win the tournament overall. But it is kind of open. Like, Sharks could win, Vikings could win, Furia could win, Gamelanders could win. If one of those top four teams doesn't, that is a monumental upset, though. If one of those doesn't win, that is a massive upset happening over in Brazil.
But yeah, hell of a bracket. If you haven't watched Brazilian Valorant,
now is the time to check it out. Like, now is the best that Brazil has been. And if you're... I know that Sean Garris, actually, is not a believer. Oh. Sean was saying... You'll
be proven wrong in Iceland.
some little Timmies were coming into my chat and saying, Sideshow, Sean doesn't believe in Brazil. He thinks they're going to get rolled. And I can understand that thought process because Sean's an NA player that's played against top-level Brazilian competition in CSGO. And they didn't dominate CS. And they're playing a similar style where it's a lot of aggression. They're trying to force fights as much as possible, play at a really high tempo. And I think that in CS, that style, because it was so prevalent, everyone in Brazil played it, got figured out to some degree. Like, you knew how to play against Brazilian teams. And I think that's what Sean and other people in NA are expecting will happen when it gets to Reykjavik. I think the utility in this game changes things quite a lot, because I think the normal responses you would use to a team that does that a lot, you're attacking, trying to play an extremely strict default, or when you're defending, making sure that you up the area and try and play for retake, or try and push other areas of the map, or whatever the response may be. Utility in this game, my theory is, favors that fast-paced style of play, because you really struggle to react if you're suddenly just slow-naded. Like, if you don't even realize what's happening and you just get caught out by a slow or a nade or a stun or a shock dart or recon or whatever, you just physically don't have enough time to be able to deal with all of the different things that are coming at you. And I think the pace is going to catch people off in this game more than it did. That's my theory. But if you're one of the doubters, now is the time to tune in, because this will be your first opportunity to stress test how good Brazil is before Reykjavik. Because if you do it during the challenges games and stuff like that, you're gonna have like some idea, but you're not gonna know really like how good the region is, because Brazil hasn't been playing out the whole of their brackets for qualification. So tune into this if you're a believer or a doubter. See how your opinion is swayed or confirmed at the end of
Believers will be winning all the channel points.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
I think so. I do think so. I think Brazil's going to be nasty good when it comes to Reykjavik. All right, Korea. The big storyline for me coming into this is Division Strikers keep winning.
I mean, that has to, yeah, I mean, that just is the storyline. Do
That's-
they just keep winning?
Yeah.
And they have the same EU format.
Yes, same format
So-
as EU, the GSL style group stage where it's double elim group stage feeding into it. It's actually a really popular format in Korea. So I think the Korean teams will be really happy about it. There's some good teams here, like Vision Strikers, for example, were losing, or not losing series, but they were drawing BO2 series with teams like Newturn and ZF Gaming and who else did they? I think it was those two teams actually. And then you have the second place team from it was Newturn and ZF Gaming. And you have the second place from First Strike TNL, who recently made roster moves and look a bit weaker than they are currently, weaker than they were back then. So the field is pretty wide open for other teams to challenge Vision Strikers. I don't think there is a single team that you would have as the favorites to disrupt Vision Strikers. Maybe Newturn, maybe like a Moyaho, which I think Moyaho is the former Bear Claw guys as well.
Oh, okay.
Actually, could you hover that? Let me just... Yeah. This was like the former core of Bear Claw that have... obviously, after that organization ended up imploding due to some sponsorship or partner issue, they're going by the name of Yahoo. So they're obviously a team to watch, but it all just comes down to who can disrupt Vision Strikers. That is going to be the thing that people care about.
Yeah, this one feels losable.
It does.
There's a possibility of a Vision Strikers loss here.
I will say though, when I've been watching Vision Strikers, and I have been following them very closely over the course of their tournament runs, since the team was formed, they always bring new stuff for the finals. When they played First Strike, they were doing pretty similar stuff in their road to the final. And then when they played against TNL, partly I think because it was their sister team, or former sister team, and partly because it was a grand final, this is the big game, they busted out like a ton of new shit that they hadn't been doing in any of the other games.
Yeah.
And so this is a narrative that gets talked about a lot within Korean esports in like League of Legends too, because I know that Monty loves to go on about this, and he brought it into Overwatch as well, though it doesn't happen in Overwatch. Do people actually save strats for the big games? And it is a thing in Korean esports to do that. It does seem to be a thing that Vision Strikers specifically does. I'm wondering if they get their hand forced early. Like, if they are saving things deep in the tournament, maybe after having a rough group stage game or a rough first map of a BO3 in the semifinals, they're like forced to use the cool shit early. That to me will be an indication that they are uncomfortable, because I think I've noticed a trend there where they genuinely do save strats for the finals. So I've got my beady eye on that, and if you're interested, you can keep an eye on Vision Strikers, because you will notice new shit. They have new shit for every tournament.
Yeah,
cool though.
I got nothing.
Yeah,
but this is a good time to catch back up on the Korean scene. I've only watched some of those Vision Strikers New Turn games, but again, this is the apt time for everyone to catch up on all the regions that they haven't been watching, because
you say that they're also running simultaneously.
Yeah, I mean, there's just an immense amount of games. Yeah, also true. Just an immense amount of games. We'll be spending all of my days watching VODs.
Yep.
All day long.
Yep, all day long.
All throughout the morning and the night. I'll have candlelight on my desk, a lantern, and I'll just be up studying VODs until the wee hours of the morn.
We are just going to be little VOD monkeys, just passing the data in our brains. One day there'll be an algorithm that can do it for us, and we will be supplanted as analysts. Until that time, we must pass the data in our monkey brains, and we must compute it into legible thought.
Let's hope that doesn't happen soon. Otherwise,
yeah. I mean, they
What am
just
I gonna
announced
do?
the talent announcement for Masters. It would be really unfortunate if they had to replace them all with just typewriters. just great floating brains, AI hooked up to typewriters that print out the analysis for random people to speak, like a news anchor just being given the script on a teleprompter, spat out by a computer.
that
Excellent A lobby control this match from ZF Gaming.
you want to do.
Hey, we were going to get into the T1 conspiracy again this week because we had David Dennis in our YouTube chat when we were doing the co-streams live. We asked him if he was an algorithm, and he responded. We asked him if we said we hope he has a good sense of humor, and he said it is hard for an AI to learn human humor. So that basically confirms it as far as I'm concerned. That confirms it. Also, NSG involved as a tournament organizer, locked in for the rest of the year. NSG owned by Comcast, same as T1, same as David Dennis. The AI corporations taking over. It's all linked. It's all linked.
Soon we're going to be out of jobs. Typewriters doing our analysis.
Yeah, I think they could do it
Out
for
of
the
jobs.
most part.
I don't
Anyway.
have a job. Not me.
Yeah, what job? What job? All right, well, I think it's time for the most important segment of the week then.
Okay, let's do it.
But you've seen this trophy before. Wyatt's Weekly Award. But who's getting it this time?
Well, that was just dead silent for us. Hopefully you played audio somewhere else. Otherwise, it's just tremendously, it's just
That's
awkward comedy.
Yeah, that is
which
really,
I'm not mad at.
I mean, that's
It
just...
works sometimes. This week, the weekly award.
Get it down.
There, I grab it.
Get
Yeah.
it down. Oh, yeah, the very original.
I mean, I feel like I said it to you earlier. I'm like, I mean, you already know who's getting the award this week. And you said, no, I don't.
No, I literally don't.
And I said that thinking it was obvious.
Is it obvious, chat? Is it obvious
it's
who's
going
getting the award?
to Baby Bay.
Oh,
Of course it's going to Baby
yeah,
Bay.
yeah.
Won Challengers 3, had an outstanding performance on a team that I think a lot due to their coach has just been making all the right decisions. Evidently, they fixed an immense amount of the problems they had. And one of the things that they changed, I think that really enabled Baby Bay, aside from the team's utility being able to set him up when he's actually entering and just putting him in position to frag harder, he has just been rifling on attack and using his knives on attack, and he's not doing so much of the AWPing. And I think that that has actually just unlocked him. Where on these sight hits, he's going in deep every time. He'll be able to find the pick, but then immediately after that, it's not like if he had an AWP and could just find the entry pick and then he's holding an angle for the retakes. They're active on post plants now, and it's a lot due to him not he doesn't step off the gas. He keeps going after they've already taken the site. He will keep pushing forward with his rifle, and he'll apply pressure onto the retakers as they're attempting to set up their retake, get their utility off. And I think that that made a massive impact. He just looked excellent on the entry, on defense. He was also to the credit of his team for making him look even better. He was always just being set up on defense to go for these aggressive plays. Over on Icebox A, him and Corey pushing up, catching 3 players while they're trying to walk into A lobby. Just off of an aggressive dash forward, a recon from Raucus, and support from Corey. The team is playing a lot better, and it's enabled him to be a better player, finding more impact.
Yeah.
And throughout the entire tournament, he was just on fire as well. I mean, individually, he was just hitting every shot. He had a damn near food tier performance in the final. I mean, what was he, like 48 and 17 or something?
Yeah, he had a crazy.
I mean, pretty
style.
comparable to what Food just did. So an immense amount of credit to him and also the team for allowing him to be, I think, in more of a position to succeed.
I'm right, 49 and
49-23.
Yeah, but still a very, very good stat line. I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Why did this award go to Baby Bay?
Okay.
And not
Zachary?
Zachary?
I don't know.
I mean, I think Zachary's a great player. I think, that would have been interesting. No.
Could I
Coach Trippy?
interrupt for a second here? Got as of 40 minutes ago.
Oh, there's the man I was going to talk about.
There it is.
Why did it not go to Coach motherfucking Trippy?
Yeah,
Huh?
it was between the two of them. It was definitely
Okay.
between the two of them.
Right,
but
right.
Bebe did have an outlandish performance.
God, he is a good-looking guy,
And
isn't he? When
we've-
Baby Bay said Coach Trippy
I know.
was a decent-looking dude, he's got
Look
the
at that
FaZe.
jawline.
I know.
That's the FaZe jawline.
That is the
right
FaZe
there.
jawline, isn't
It's
it?
unbelievable.
That's unreal. Some people are just born with it, and some people look like a melted egg like me. And, there's just no competition. But, we all have our little niches, and we all occupy them as well as we can.
Oh, Christ. All right, well, I think that's a good place to end the show. That's a good place to end the show. Remember, commenters, leave a comment as to what the name of the
two-man show should be.
of what this two-man show should
once
be.
we get abandoned by all of our friends permanently. And remember there's Kurt in the background, so if you want to make it a three-man show and give Kurt his proper props, you could include him in the title, or you can just make it...
Trust me, you don't want to hear me talk.
Okay.
Well, you got some hot takes coming up?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, we will see you again. We will probably be doing some kind of co-streaming for Masters, although we can't actually show the broadcast on stream, so we'll be doing something for Masters anyway. And the next time you'll catch us will be Backchat on Monday, which is with, as yet, an unknown guest. So if you have ideas about who you would like it to be, I mean, that's going to be like in the middle of Masters as well, so I don't even know who the hell is going to agree to that. But we'll try and figure something out to keep Backchat going. And in the meantime, keep yourself safe. Goodbye, everybody.